that's before the portfolio committee, is a presentation on backlogs within the permitting environment, Chair. But before I get to the contents of the presentation and the backlogs, Chair, I think it's important also for the portfolio committee and Chair to note that there were other backlogs that we experienced about 3 months or 4 months ago, which we have eradicated. So it's important that I also just indicate which ones were those that's not in the presentation because they're no longer backlog, Chair, with your indulgence. The first one was the investment drive project, Chair. Probably it was very prominent in the media, I think on TV as well. And we had approach from the presidency when we had applications from missions that had to be finalized in our head office in Pretoria. There was a backlog of 3,000 of those applications, Chair, and it directly affected economic growth. We had a request to assist big business, Chair. We put our resources in that, and in a matter of 3 months, we finalized those 3,090 applications. So that has all been finalized. On the e-visa, DHA e-visa, Chair, I'm sure the Chair is also familiar and the members finalized 11,000, almost 12,000 applications. We only have 793 current applications there, so it's no longer backlog on that. On the pilot, Chair would also, and members would be aware that we launched a pilot project for the e-visa with Nigeria. We had 5,257 of those applications. All of them, or most of them, have been finalized as well, Chair. We only have current applications of 197. Chair, it's important that I just wanted to bring that on board. It's not included in the presentation, but that is work that we finalized. The other project that we are busy with now, Chair, is the study visas. From the 16th of February, we had 7,000 of those applications, Chair. We finalized about 4,000, and the remainder will be finalized before the end of March. That's important for us as well, Chair, because we do not want to deny students and learners the opportunity to study. So, Chair, I wanted just to bring that on board to say that those were backlogs we had. Those are all finalized. So let me go to the current backlogs that we currently have, particularly in the permanent residency and the temporary residency areas, Chair. Can then go to slide 4. Muzi, please. So, Chair, the Deputy Minister spoke about the impact we had, and this is just a problem statement we have with the backlogs, Chair. The problem we had during the COVID-19 period, where we had sometimes had no staff working. At most times, almost all times, we only had 50% of staff working. So we had to reduce number of staff, and that also contributed to the accumulation of the backlog. Chair, the temporary residence and permanent residence applications were suspended during different periods of the backlog. But for example, the temporary residents were then reopened in 2020. Applications were taken in from 2020, Chair. But we did not have the staff to deal with that. And in January 2022, we opened permanent residency applications. What resulted then, Chair, is that a high influx of applications that also contributed to the increased backlog. And during the presentation, I will highlight to the committee the increases for 2022 in both in temporary residence and permanent residence applications. Another matter that really, and this is a key matter, Chair, that affected the turnaround times and our ability to finalize applications and probably contributed to the backlog, is the findings from the Lubisi report on the irregularities, corrupt practices that happened both with inland applications as well as applications at the missions. And the department then had to implement strict measures to curb this corruption, Chair. And the strict measures was through the delegations, where the approving authority was now increased from, for example, temporary residence, Chair, where one person could finalize the application, and that process was fairly quick for temporary residents. Now we needed 4 persons up to the DG level to finalize one application. So that really extended the turnaround times. And these delegations were implemented from 12 January 2022. But as Minister also indicated, Chair, we had no choice but to implement these stringent measures because of the findings of the Lupisi report. Another matter, Chair, is the capacity within the permitting environment. We currently have 1 director suspended, 2 assistant directors, as well as the SAO suspended, as well as the dismissal of the chief director of permits, and 1 SAO also dismissed, Chair. SAO is a very important level for us. That's the level of adjudication, and we depend highly on that, Chair. If I can move on to the next slide. Just as part of the introduction, Chair, thing important on this slide for the committee to note is that we consider a backlog for temporary residents when an application proceeds or is not processed within 8 weeks. That's temporary residence. That's for us a backlog. So even if a person applied in 2020, in December of 2022, which is just 3 months ago, Chair, we included that in our backlog statistics. So the backlog statistics is high because we kept it strictly. Anything over 8 weeks for us is a backlog. In terms of permanent residency, any applications over 8 months for us is a backlog. So any applications before 31 May 2022, Chair, we include that as part of our backlog. It's also important to note. What's important also on this slide on the top, Chair, is that all applications locally submitted is adjudicated by the Chief Directorate Permits, and all applications from abroad is adjudicated and finalized at the missions abroad. No applications from missions come to the head office, Chair. So just in terms of, as a summary, the last 2 points on permanent residency on this slide, on the current status, all applications, as I indicated, over the period of 8 months, currently stands at 40,340. And the applications that's still within the 8-month cycle is 9,145. So in total, Chair, we have on our system 49,529 applications in the system for permanent residency. Maybe just on this note, Chair, on that particular point, and maybe I'll raise it again later, it's important for the committee to note that the 40,000 that's indicated here, that's over a period of 8 months, Chair, that the statistics, if we look at statistics of permanent residency applications finalized since 2016, is almost 123,000 applications. That's what we finalized, Chair. And the backlog since 2016 is 40,000. But as I indicated, and it will become apparent later on, 10,000 of the 40,000 is applications submitted in 2022, Chair. I just wanted to give that context so that the committee can see that we're not only talking about the backlog, but about the huge volumes of permanent residence applications, 123,000 that we have finalized over this period compared to the backlog of 40,000, Chair. In terms of temporary residence, Chair, this is, as I indicated, all applications over 8 weeks. It was isolated, and there's 55,172 applications from 2020 till October 2022, Chair and members. So this backlog of temporary residents, it only stretches till from 2021, when we opened during COVID, until October 2022, Chair. And so the total applications, we have 20,000 new applications for temporary residents that we've received now, Chair. So the total applications we have in the system for temporary residents is 75,814 applications that we need to finalize. Let me also give the context of how many applications for temporary residents over this period we finalized, Chair. Since 2016, for temporary residents, Chair, we have finalized 739,000 applications, almost 740,000 applications for temporary residence, Chair, as against the backlog of 55,000 that we are currently sitting with over this period, Chair. I just needed to mention that to give the context. And a lot of this backlogs, Chair, particularly temporary residents, when we opened in 2021 for temporary residents, and we did not have the staff during COVID. That contributed probably half of this backlog that we currently have with temporary residents. The next slide, please. Okay, now this is the breakdown of what I've just spoke about earlier so that the committee can see the statistics and how we keep the statistics for us and how we monitor the statistics. On the top bar, Chair, it indicates the years from 2016, how many applications we have since 2016, 2017, 18, 19, and 20, and 2021. Chair. Now, if you add up the backlog till 2021, that is 29,000, Chair. Then you add the 10,000 that we received in 2022 for PR, that is from 1 January till the end of May, and that's the total of 40,365. That's the backlog we sit with, 2022 plus previous year's backlogs, Chair. Important to note is, for us, this slide indicates the inbox. The inbox is where the applications are currently situated, okay, Chair. And I'm just going to focus on the red block, because the current applications on 9 are still within 9,164 is still within the 8-month period. So that is work in progress. So the backlog is broken down in the different quality assurance levels. And this is important for the committee to note that it indicates that there are 6 individuals, 6 officials who need to work and finalize one application. Chair. It starts with the adjudicator. The adjudicator verifies applications, need to make sure the bank statements are correct, all documents are in order, etc. Then it goes to first quality assurance, which is the assistant director. And then it goes to a director, and there's one director there, and this is where the bottleneck is created mostly. Then from there, it goes to the chief director, then to the DDG of immigration. And finally, when it's finalized, the last person to make a decision is the DG. Once all of these 6 have attended to the one application, Chair, then that application is finalized only. So what it also means is that if, for example, quality assurance 1, the 18,459 indicated there, if the assistant directors finalize at 18,000, it moves to the director. That volume, then if director finalizes, move on, etc. So eventually, the 40,000 needs to be in the inbox of the DG. And when the DG has made a decision, that 40,000 is finalized. Chair, this is just the complexity that's involved with permanent residence application. Is the process we have, the delegations, that there's 6 officials that needs to attend to one application, and it will only be finalized once the DG has signed off on this 40,000 applications. Chair, I just took some time on that so that the committee can note what's involved with the process of finalizing one application for PR. The next slide, Chair, just speaks to, it's a funnel approach. This is supposed to look like a funnel, Chair. And what I explained earlier is that at the top level, you'll see the funnel is bigger because we have, in permanent residence, we have 18 adjudicators. In assistant directors, we have 4. So there's more officials. But as we move down in the funnel, Chair, there's only one chief director, there's only one DDG, and there's only one DG. So that's where the funnel and the bottlenecks normally happens when it gets to PR applications, these 6 levels, Chair. And that is the matter that delays the finalization of applications. That's why we have 8 months to finalize a PR application. And when the volumes are particularly high, as will indicate for 2022, Chair, this is where the pressure is finally based, is at the bottom of the funnel, at the chief director level, the DDG level, and the DG level, Chair. Thank you. The next slide. So Chair, let me get to, I'm sure the question from the committee is, by when will this backlog be finalized? So the next few slides will focus on the projections to finalize the permanent residency backlog of, if all things stays equal, Chair, with the current workforce that we have. Now, we only have 16 adjudicators in the permanent residency area, Chair. And they have to then deal with all applications, the backlog as all incoming applications in permanent residency. But of the current 16 applications, they have daily targets, and they can produce, as it's indicated there, each adjudicator has 7 applications per day they must finalize. There's 5 working days. There's 35 per week they have to do, and they have to finalize 280 applications per week. Chair, I'll come to the processes we put in place to monitor performance from the different quality assurance levels, the 6 levels, as I indicated, Chair. So 8 of those adjudicators is currently used in the e-visa hub, Chair, because as I indicated, we had a backlog in the e-visa hub, which has now been eradicated. So those 8 adjudicators will then move to the permanent residency backlog. But in addition, Chair, and this is an important bullet, bullet number 5, Chair, the Deputy Minister spoke about it. We have now appointed, and they started 1 March, Chair, 18 legally qualified adjudicators, Chair. They are now in training. They all have legal qualifications, because we identified as a department that we needed to improve the quality of decision making. Because of the high number of litigation, the high number of appeal cases, we needed to look at the competency of adjudicators, Chair. So these 18 have started, they're now in a training, and the training will end on 31 March. When they will be released from 1 April or 3rd of April, Chair, they will then go to the e-visa hub and deal with new applications, which means that the 8 adjudicators will join the other 8, and we'll then have 16 adjudicators in the PR area to deal with applications. And so the second last bullet, Chair, with 16 adjudicators, our input will increase, our output will increase by 560 per week. That's what our capacity will be. So, Chair, realistically, if we stay with the 16 adjudicators at a rate of 112 applications per day, it will take 360 working days to clear this backlog of 365, Chair. But I'll come to that because there's other interventions that we'll put in place to make sure that we'll deal with this period that we identified there, Chair. Because all things can't remain the same. We'll need to make interventions. 360 working days is too long, Chair. If we can go to the next slide. The next slide just indicates the temporary residence backlog now, Chair. As I indicated, there's 55,172 applications in backlog with temporary residence. And Chair, I also indicated earlier that we finalized since 2016, we finalized almost about 740,000 of these applications. And the main reason for that, Chair, is before the delegations, 1 official could finalize a temporary residence visa. Now we need 4 officials, and it's with the DG and the Chief Director to finalize that. Because, as I indicated, we had to implement, as a department, stringent measures because of the Lubisi report. So, Chair, this is where the backlog sits. It's at the adjudicator level, mostly. There's applications that must be assigned, Chair, and the first quality assurance, second quality assurance, and then finally the DG. It's the same concept with permanent residency, Chair, and members. The difference is just that there's 4 levels here. With permanent residency, there's 6 levels. We currently, for 2023, we're sitting with 20,000 applications. That's work in progress currently. The next one, presentation or slide, just shows the funnel again, Chair, for temporary residents. And clearly it shows the high numbers we have at the adjudication level to deal with the 19,000, and then ultimately it gets to the director, chief director, and the DG level. And that's where the bottleneck happens, because we have just 1 DG and 1 chief director. The next slide deals with the projection for temporary residents. Same as we did with the projection for permanent residency, Chair. This is the projection for temporary residents. The total applications is 78,000 applications, but we know the backlog is 55,000 applications, Chair. So we have 23 adjudicators in the adjudication hub that deals with temporary residents. So in total, we have 39 adjudicators that deals with all applications, Chair, including e-visas as well. So we have set a target for them of 10 applications a day. So the output from these 23 adjudicators is 1,150. We estimate, if all things staying equal, that it will take us 339 working days to clear the backlog. But the 78 is the backlog plus current work, Chair, because the turnaround time for temporary residents, as I indicated, is only 8 weeks. So, Chair, the number of applications received, for example, per month, per year for us is 92,000 on average. That's the applications we receive. So with the current capacity in temporary residents, we will struggle to deal with the backlog as well as incoming work. But the measures to deal with this will follow shortly, Chair. The next slide. The next slide speaks to interventions, what we have done here, Chair, already. So firstly, we have seconded staff from the provinces and head office to assist at various adjudication levels. I indicated, for example, the funnel effect, Chair, where we only have one chief director, one DDG, one director, etc. We have used the assistance of provinces to assist us on chief director level, some DMO director level, some deputy directors and assistant directors from provinces and head office are assisting us in this level to deal with the funnel effect, Chair, to deal with the bottlenecks. So we brought in and seconded officials from the province. That's number one. What I did not include here, Chair, and I apologize for that, is that we also received overtime. Overtime has been approved from 1 June till 28, but it finished at the end of February, Chair. 81 officials worked overtime, 2 hours a day, and we finalized 13,000 temporary residence visas and almost 8,000 permanent residence applications during the overtime. But all these officials, both head office and provinces, were given the opportunity to work that overtime, which has come to an end, but it did make an impact. Secondly, Chair, we DG appointed a PR committee comprising of the DDG of Immigration, Civic Services, HR, the PM of Western Cape, as well as the Chief Director Permits, to strengthen the quality of decisions and to also assist with the finalization of applications, Chair. This committee was established in 2022 to help with the backlogs as well as current APP targets, Chair. Then the next 3 bullets deals with basically how we're managing performance. The first thing we implemented from last year, October, Chair, is operations management concept and principles. That entails daily sectional meetings, supervisor meetings, management meetings to monitor the work of the staff and to make sure that they meet these daily norms. As I indicated earlier, Chair, on the projections, we need to closely monitor the performance of our staff and the meeting daily targets so that we can achieve the timeframes that we set out for portfolio committee. We've also got a official that does data analytics for us here in the office. He reconciles and monitors targets on a weekly and daily basis. We have a dashboard that he completes, that he tracks performance, he tracks the backlog. He gives spreadsheets to myself as the acting DDG. The DG also on a daily basis gets spreadsheets. While performance is also monitored to track our performance in terms of APP target, litigation cases, queries, but also, Chair, in terms of backlogs. Then, Chair, another key development that we are busy with, because as I indicated, the challenge with the funnel approach, Chair, is we had to look at the funnel and the different levels in delegations. Now that we have implemented controls, we have implemented operations management, we do daily monitoring, we have a PR committee established, Chair. We are comfortable that we can look at the delegations and how we can use the delegations to fast-track applications, reduce the turnaround times of applications, the processing of applications, etc., so that we not continuously create a backlog. And key to this, Chair, is the delegations and the standard operating procedures. There's one particular sign on delegations that I will come to later on, Chair. We will then have workshops with the staff on the delegations, the SOPs, because the SOPs will have to be aligned to the delegations. Also, Chair, the second last bullet is a very important bullet, um, is the one dealing with the regulations and the SOPs on the recommendations from Vulundlela report, Chair. Now, Chair, the Vulundlela team made some key recommendations on process improvements for applications. And one of them is to reduce the documents that applicants have to submit. For example, the time periods of police clearance certificates. Currently, for every 6 months you've been in a country, you need to submit. There's a recommendation on that we relax that to 5 years instead of 6 months. Also, the radiology report, Chair, that we take that out as a requirement. They've also made recommendations on what is called the trusted employer scheme, where the employers will assist us with verification of documents, that we have closer relationships with DTIC because we are so dependent on verifications from them and the Department of Labor. These are all recommendations from Vulundlela report, Chair, that we have included, and we have to include in the draft regulations. And one key area that Vulundlela report, headed by previous DG of Home Affairs, Mavusi Msimang, as their second recommendation in process is to look at the capacity of the whole permitting unit, Chair, to look at not only the quantity of staff, but the different levels as well, so that we can respond to the number and high number of visas that's submitted to us on an annual basis, Chair. We have a draft business case and headed by HR, and the DG is pushing for us to submit it shortly. The business case on our requirements for additional staff in the permitting area, because even the presidency has identified that we need capacity in this particular area to deal with the demands on the visa and permitting applications that we receive. Then lastly on this, Chair, that we are busy with, and I'm sure the Portfolio Committee is very familiar with this aspect, is the overhauling of the immigration policy, and to address also the abuse that we have in the visa regime. The Deputy Minister, for example, spoke about 70% of all applications, Chair, for both permanent residents and temporary residents is in the category of relative, spouse, etc., Chair. I must maybe just add here, Chair, that the one area of focus for us is the APP targets, which is the both PR as well as temporary residents, which is APP targets is critical skills, general work, as well as business visas and permanent residence applications. On those categories, Chair, and it's in our APP, over the 6 years, we've achieved 99. We finalized 99%, more than 90% of those applications. So the backlog really doesn't relate, probably a small percentage relates to the APP areas. Most of them is in the relative area, as I indicated. So if you can then go to the next slide, this is current interventions. If I can then talk about additional interventions. I spoke about earlier about if all things stay the same, and we have the current 39 adjudicators, that both backlogs, 300 and plus working days it will require to finalize that, Chair. So the additional interventions, and I must just add that this goes with the 18. I already spoke about the 18 adjudicators. The new legally qualified adjudicators will make a big impact. 18 adjudicators is increasing our capacity by 44%, Chair, in the adjudication environment. That will make a big impact for us in dealing with the backlog, but also dealing with the incoming work. So currently we have 61 officials, Chair, that's undergoing training. They will be deployed, as Deputy Minister also indicated, to the foreign missions from 1 July 2023, this year. There's 61 of them, Chair. So we will use, they will finish their theory at the end of March this year, end of this month. From the 11th of April, we will bring them to our head office, to the adjudication hub, to full-time be dedicated until their deployment to the backlog, Chair. So 29 of them will be full-time dedicated to the permanent residency backlog. And it's indicated there there are senior admin officers that will deal with the backlog of 11,000 at adjudication level, that they will deal with those applications. They can then finalize 3,000 of those. The assistant directors, which are more, Chair, 20 of them will put at PR assistant director level. So together, both of them will assist us with finalizing 21,000 applications, Chair. But as I indicated, once they finalize it, then moves to quality assurance 3, 4, and then finally for a decision to DG's inbox, Chair. So this 29 will, over the period 2 months before deployment, will really assist us to make a dent into the backlog. If we go to temporary residence, the next slide, Chair. The next slide on top speaks about the 61 that will finalize the applications, and then for 2 months will be dedicated to the backlog, Chair. 32 of them will be delegated, deployed to the temporary residence backlog. And with them there, Chair, and with the delegations that the next slide will speak about, that we intend to finalize by the end of March, and envisage to get approval on that. They will also make a big dent into this particular area of temporary residence. And the second last bullet indicates that they will then finalize 10,000, the senior admin officers will finalize 10,000 applications, 10,200, and the assistant directors will finalize 9,000 of these applications by that. So together it's a 20,000 applications that we can get from those cohort that will come and assist us in the temporary residence environment. Will also make a big dent for us, Chair. The next slide speaks to the Chair, to the implementation plan. The delegations. Chair, as I indicated, before 12 January 2022, before the Lubisi report, we had 6 persons still with a permanent residency officials process, but temporary residence was just 1 official, an adjudicator, Chair. And as I indicated, we finalized over those periods with the 1 adjudicator about 740,000 of those applications, because it was a quicker process. 1 person finalizes the application. Now, after the stringent measures we implemented, we amended the delegations to curb corruption. The temporary residence visa levels moved to 4, and PR remained at 6, Chair. What's important from this is probably the last 2 bullets, Chair, is what we are recommending in the delegations now that we have put controls in place. Quality assurance will still be there, Chair, is that we have proposed in the delegations that the temporary residence visa levels, instead of 4 now, moves to 2. We'll still have 1 adjudicator and then 1 assistant director to do quality assurance. So there'll still be quality assurance, while your permanent residency will be reduced from 6 to 4 levels. The DG would not be part of this because, as we know, DG has got a full program every day. So it's important that we don't bog DG down in the permanent residence processes of finalizing a PR application. Also, it's important that in terms, Chair, of Section 86 of the Immigration Act, in terms of appeals, the DG was functus officio by finalizing a PR application, making a decision on a visa, and then also having to adjudicate an appeal. So that also resolves that particular problem and legal challenge we had in terms of that, Chair. So once the delegations is amended, as well as the regulations, Chair, the SOPs will be aligned accordingly. The next slide. The next slide, Chair, speaks to just the time frames in terms of the implementation plan. I spoke about ops management, which is a key monitoring of daily performance, the weekly dashboard, and the reconciliation of targets. That's done on a daily basis, Chair, and it's ongoing. It's not going to stop. We'll have to have these daily meetings every day. The amendments of the delegations, as I indicated, the approval is expected by 31 March 2023. We have finalized the draft delegations. It's gone through the legal process, Chair. It's just awaiting sign off. The draft regulations will be submitted to the Minister by 31 May 2023. This is a more lengthier process, Chair, but the legal services are attending to the draft regulations. And this is the alignment of to the Vulundlela report, as I indicated before. The increase of capacity, Chair, is the bringing staff from the foreign missions to assist us for those 2 months, but also to fill the vacancies. Chair, we're in the process of the shortlisting for the Chief Director post. Also the finalizing of the disciplinary hearing of the Director, which will probably be finalized by the end of this week, and then we can start recruiting in that particular space as well. But we did, as part of the capacitation model, we did appoint the 18 adjudicators, as I mentioned before. Then, Chair, a key development for us is the creation of an e-visa hub. The e-visa is what we want to move to in the new financial year to scale it up. Currently, Chair, and members would know that the e-visa only caters for visitors, short-term visitors, Chair. It's got the capability to upscale it to critical skills visas and other visa types, Chair. So in the new financial year, we want to scale that up. So we move to electronic visas, Chair. And these 18 newly appointed legally qualified adjudicators is going to be key. They will move into this e-visa hub. It's be based in the BVR building, where we have the testing site for our IT unit as well, Chair. So when we do upscaling, they are right in the testing environment and the production hub there. So that's a key development for us. That hub will be ready for occupation the 3rd of April. So when these 18 adjudicators are released from training and they're fully trained, they will then go to the e-visa hub to deal with the e-visa applications and new applications, Chair, so that the current 39 adjudicators can focus on the backlog, Chair. Must also indicate that, Chair, if we can then go to the next slide, because that will yes, the next slide then speaks to the conclusion, Chair. I'm almost done. Conclusion is we will utilize the 61 officials that will be deployed in July to assist us with the backlog. We'll do the assessment on the different levels that's required, because as you finalize, as I indicated in terms of the funnel, as you finalize on one adjudication level, it moves to the next level. So we need to be adaptable in how we utilize our staff, Chair. That's important. We then, the third bullet, very important for the committee to note, with all these interventions, Chair, the 18 adjudicators, the foreign office staff, we envisage that the backlog will be completed by the 15th of 15 months from now, ending June 2024, Chair. Why I'm saying that is because we now have stability in the e-visa. We will be dealing with the study visa applications, Chair. We will also be the study visas, the queries, Chair. We have established a team that deals with legal queries, maybe just on legal queries. We have finalized, we received 1,100 queries, litigation cases. Chair, that we isolate, we have finalized half of them. The other half is pending that we are dealing with now. There's 5 officials dedicated to that. We have 9 officials dealing with other queries, including queries from parliamentarians, portfolio committee, etc., Chair. So that is, besides that project that's running, with the capacity that we'll have, we'll still finalize this backlog within 15 months from now, Chair. Just the last 2 bullets indicate the current number of applications we received. Firstly, in temporary residence for the year 2022, we received 97,000 applications for temporary residence, Chair. And then for permanent residence, we opened for permanent residence as I indicated, 1 January 2022. And for last year alone, we received 20,503 permanent residence applications, Chair. And that's just shows the average that we get. It's about 350 temporary visa applications a day and about 70 permanent resident applications we receive every day, Chair. Then the last slide, Chair, is just to thank the portfolio committee and to ask the portfolio committee to note the interventions, the implementation plan to reduce the backlog in permanent residents and temporary residents within the permitting chief directorate. I thank you very much, Chair and members. Thank you.
Thank you very much, TTG Simons. We can now move to the second presentation. Mr. Matonsi.
The second presentation is by Rasa.
Yes, we can move to the second presentation. Mr. Matonsi.
Yes, Chair.
I'm saying we can.
Yeah, Mose is flagging the presentation. So
Okay.
I'm saying the second presentation is Rasa by Rasa.
Yes, noted.
Okay, can you see my presentation?
Yeah, we can see on the highlights that the Rasa you're supposed to, I think, to open the document. I think while you are opening the document, you can talk to it. In the meantime, Muzi and Matons will assist. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, colleagues, and good morning, members of the Portfolio Committee. My name is Farah Pesu, Chairperson of Rasa. May we move to the next slide? The next one. And the next one. Thank you. Thank you. I will start my presentation by just introducing the basis of our mandate as Rasa, just to remind honorable members that the Appeals Authority functions as a quasi-judicial entity. I believe most of us understands what I'm saying by that. We are sort of a court, though we are not a court of first instance, but we are a court of appeal. So I'm going to outline how the Rasa is conducting its appeals before I move to the gist of the progress of the backlog. Rasa, as an adjudication body, and its processes are based on a fundamental legal principle known as the audi alteram partem rule. That is to listen to the other side. When I was presenting to the committee last year, I did mention that we have as Rasa experienced some of the challenges in conducting our appeals, meaning that taking off the backlog project off the ground on the basis that we have struggled to locate the appellants. I'm going to use the word appellants to describe the asylum seekers who has made their appeals through to Rasa. So on this basis, this was a hurdle for Rasa to proceed with appeals during the inception of the backlog project because of the inavailability of those appellants before Rasa, as I've already indicated that our adjudication is based on this legal fundamental principle. This requirement, it forms the basis of the two requirements of natural justice, including that of procedural fairness. So in short, by not having an appellant in front of it, then the procedure, the entire adjudication procedure will be hampered to be procedurally not fair in terms of PAJA. And these are some of the challenges that RASA is facing, and through the courts, these are some of the issues that the court has lambasted us over the years. Next slide. The next slide is detailing how RASA proceeds in securing an appellant before it for hearing. RASA issues a notice of hearing. A notice of hearing is what in the normal course of the court we call a notice of set down. This notice of hearing is issued to an asylum seeker as saying to him or her, this is your notice of hearing on this particular day. Avail yourself through to RASA in order to be heard by RASA. In the very same notice, we also highlight to an appellant his or her right to legal representation and to an interpreter. If they indicate that they are not in a position to provide an interpreter for themselves, RASA does provide the interpretation services through the department. So prior to these hearings, the appellant is given an opportunity to submit further evidence and heads of argument. I'm saying this in the light that in the normal appeal process, we know that in an appeal court, you will stick to the facts as you have ventilated them in the lower court. So with RASA, the courts have directed that we have to listen to the appeals de novo, meaning we can include new evidence that has since arisen since the asylum seeker has been in the Republic, contrary to what they may have put before an RSTO, who have rejected them, resulting into them appealing to RASA. So our setup is that an appellant is given an opportunity to present further evidence and heads of argument to RASA. So on the date of the hearing, the RASA will conduct a procedurally fair hearing and may also invite a representative of the UNHCR to sit in the appeal hearing. This often happens in very complex appeal hearings or where an input of the UNHCR is required, especially on those countries that has been decommissioned as asylum producing countries by the UNHCR. Next slide. It is against this background, honorable members, that the RASA has previously presented to the committee its challenges in successfully serving these notices of hearing to the appellants. And I'll put it in this way. As I previously presented that we are struggling as RASA to locate the appellants, as most of the appellants who are in this backlog, they've been in the Republic for a lengthy period of time. Some they've since entered the Republic around 2012, 2014, and the contact details that they have provided to the RSGO at that point of entry has now changed because they move around the Republic. As we all know, that South Africa does not have an encampment system. We integrate into societies. So these are some of the issues that RASA came across as we implemented this backlog project. We implemented the project, but there were no appellants for a longer period of time to present themselves before RASA. And in law, we are precluded from considering an appeal and finalize same without having notified the appellant. So those are some of the issues that stagnated this backlog project from its inception. However, RASA, together with the department, have successfully employed a working strategy to get the appellants to acknowledge these notices. What we have done is, together with the department, we have blocked this Section 22 permits renewals of appellants. How it works is, an appellant, upon a certain period of time, the Section 22 permit, which legalizes him or her to remain in the Republic will expire. Once it expires, they go to the department to apply for a renewal. So what we have done is, before we can renew that section 22, the department then says, go and greet at RASA. So this has significantly worked for us as a project, because now we are seeing that these appellants coming through to us in numbers. So what is happening is, now when they come through to RASA, what we do is we serve them in person the notices of hearing, and also give them a date upon which they have to return to RASA to be heard. Next slide. So as a result, RASA has now successfully updated this appellant's contact details, serve them notices in person, and then this milestone will enable us to proceed to finalize appeal cases, even in the event that the appellant does not attend the hearing as scheduled. For us, this is an ammunition that will protect us in the courts. Should the appellant not avail themselves for the hearing, RASA is then mandated to then proceed to write what we call a paper determination if the appellant does not show up. So for the first time since the inception and the implementation of this project, members are now starting to hear 3 to 4 appeals a day, as opposed to what we have experienced in the past. As I previously reported, that due to asylum seekers not acknowledging the notices, you'll find that 3 to 4 appeals are scheduled to a member on a single particular day. And you'll find that at the end of the day, the member will wait for the entire day for someone to pitch up, to be heard. And in other instances, no appellant will then show up on the day, or one at least will then show up on the day. So that deeply impacted on our statistics in moving forward with adjudication of the appeals. So in short, what I'm saying is that now, since we have employed this strategy, we are receiving them in numbers, and in a day, now members are the ones who are inundated with hearings. 3 to 4 appeals per member a day. This is how now we are rolling. Next slide. As previously reported to the committee, 2029 signifies the highest peak of influx of the asylum seekers in the Republic. South Africa also experienced a recession during that time, but in our region, Zimbabwe was the hardest hit with near economic collapse. For the first time, South Africa received asylum seekers in such numbers that the system could not keep up with the demand. So in short, this is the basis of our backlog. This is what culminated to what we're having today. And further, the Refugee Appeals Board, as it was then, became unprecedented with numbers of failed asylum seekers, which emanated from the RSDO decisions, of course. So further, on that note, the Western Cape decision of Herere Mana and the chairperson of the Refugee Board, it made matters worse for RASA, because due to the fact that RASA became inundated with appeals, the members sought upon themselves to kill their then backlog by hearing these appeal cases individually as members. As you may recall, the initial constitution of RASA, it used to be the chairperson and its 2 members. So the 3 of them, they used to sit individually hearing these matters across the country. So what the Herere Mana case sought to say was that that was not procedurally fair, and that was contrary to the provisions of the Refugees Act, because at all times they had to sit as a quorum. So you can imagine all those many decisions and hearings that they've conducted as a single member, sitting as single members. They were all remitted back to the Refugee Appeals Board for rehearings. So this, in short, formed significantly, part of this backlog that we are now having. The minister previously highlighted on the high influx of economic migrants as well. That being also a contributing factor, because I'll put to the committee that this is the most abused system, this RASA appeal process. I'm saying so because even in court, when your case is being finalized and a judgment goes against you, not everyone is entitled to appeal, or not everyone would rather want to appeal. But in this instance, an appeal is another mechanism that failed asylum seekers use to remain to the Republic. And they know that the South African laws in this regard are protecting them, because what in the past the department has said is, why can't the appellants wait for their decision outside the Republic? But we were lambasted to say they are before a court of law. They must be given an opportunity to finalize whatever that they are embarking on in terms of the legal processes. Next slide. This backlog is not as a result of capacity constraint, contrary to popular belief and the incompetence of RASA. This is what I've just highlighted now, that every failed asylum seeker appeal their rejection outcome because of the system allows. Currently, in our refugee laws, or rather our domestic law, including the international law, there's no legislation that is dealing with economic migrants. So in short, all the people who came here for green up pastures, for opportunities, an asylum process is the most attractive option to them, in that they go through there, they clog these appeal systems, and creating this untenable backlogs for us to deal with. The legislature created this unending bureaucratic ladder of appeal and review processes, which is highly abused by asylum seekers, of course. Further, also the international treaties and the conventions on asylum seekers, they don't have any legislation as pertaining to economic migrants. So the legislature, internationally and domestically, they did not foresee, when they legislated, that there will be the abuse of these asylum processes by asylum seekers. So this is where we are, and this is perpetuating this further bottleneck for us sitting as RASA and the appeal. But we have a solution to that. It's a solution that I will elaborate it in the next coming slides. Next slide, please. This slide details the agreement that the government had through the Department of Home Affairs and the UNHCR. The last Friday, it was the 9th of March, it was an anniversary of this backlog project plan, as we reached a milestone of 2 years. I must remind the honorable members that this agreement is for a period of 4 years. So we are already on the 2nd year. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yes, this is still on the agreement of the backlog agreement. The total cost of our 4-year implementation plan with 36 members between the parties, meaning between the DHA and the USR and the UNHCR, amounts to 146 million rands. Next slide. I now delve into the project scope, which will lead us to the progress so far. But as a background, I'll tap on the scope to fully put the members into terms of what has really transpired ever since the project took off. The first 6 months of the phase, this phase was intended as a preparatory phase to lay the groundwork and included inter alia, amongst others, the recruitment and training of members, developing standard operating procedures for all the processes, including digitalization of files and also digitalization and streaming of files, in different case processes modalities. That was the first phase of the project. Be reminded that the project started in March, but it was implemented from April 2021. So the second phase was to see the active commencement of the auditing and digitalization of files by staff members in the refugee reception offices, as well as streaming of these cases to enable the members to start the adjudication of appeals. So this is almost a year. And I put to the committee that the first decision that RASA has finalized since the inception of this project was in December 2021. So in short, RASA has actually started adjudicating on these appeals in 2022, the beginning of 2022. Next slide. The next slide is detailing the amount of the appeal cases of the backlog, in short. So according to our NIS system, which is the National Immigration Information System, as at the implementation of the plan, the pending appeal cases before RASA were at 153,000. So through a mechanism that was put in place to determine which of the finalized cases were still part of the backlog, as well as the inactive cases. The number through that mechanism then increased. To put this into perspective, I'll say this total number that was deducted from the 153 is finalized appeals, which were still part of the backlog. So those had to be taken out, as well as inactive cases. Inactive cases, I mean those cases where the appellant has not moved, meaning they've never bothered to go back to renew their Section 22 permits upon expiry. They haven't filed any further documents, appeal documents before RASA. So they are just there in number, but there's no movement, there's no activity on those files. So on this note, the project was then ring-fenced, and the total number that we had to work on was this 133,582. So this is the official backlog number that we recognize, that we are working on. Next slide. RASA presented to the Portfolio Committee on the 20th of September last year. And amongst other things, or issues rather, put before the committee were challenges that RASA faced, which delayed the smooth running of the project. Now I'm going into the progress made thus far, since we came to the Portfolio Committee on the 20th of September last year. RASA has in this 5-month period successfully eradicated some of these challenges, and it is continuing to do so. The project report is outlined below, though we still have few remaining hurdles that we are dealing with. Next slide. the digitalization of files. We have previously reported that we have managed to digitalize 11,818 files when we were previously presenting. So currently the number has increased and we have digitalized 17,841 files across the regions. And to further assist the project with the digitalization of this appeal files, the UNHCR in line with the partnership agreement has donated 2 scanning machines for the digitalization. This will increase the volume of the scanned files. Next slide. As of 2021, we have managed to allocate finalized and digitalized files, more than 6,000 to our members. So on this note, I'll come in and say that these files that we are currently digitalizing is complete files. As you all know that you cannot appear before any adjudicator, a court of law, or a decision maker with an incomplete files, because that will render the entire process to be procedurally flawed. What if the very same page that is missing is the page that is holding the case together? So some of our challenges as we started was that some of the key missing documents were not available for us when we're streaming these files. So now things are shaping up, or rather I say things have shaped up. We are now digitalizing complete files in order for us to proceed with a complete file in finalizing these appeals. So to date, more than 6,000 cases has been allocated to members for the members to review. At this stage, further statistical reports include weekly dashboards to track productivity. The volumes of the finalized decision are coming from members in all our different regions. Next slide. This table is evidencing the digitalized files done so far. You can see there in our different regions, Durban, Pretoria, Cape Town, Gqeberha, and Messina, and the total there being 17,940. And if one looks at the total number of the backlog amount, maybe someone will say it's a drop in the ocean. But for now, we are comfortable with this amount because the adjudication between the members has only been taking off now. So as these files are digitalized, we are right behind them. We can't say we are already approaching this phase and therefore we are running out of digitalized files. So for now, we are still safe, we are still okay. Next slide. Capacitation at RASA. Well, RASA has successfully recruited admin personnel to assist with the project. We have recruited 2 caseworkers at head office to assist the members with day-to-day administrative issues. We have also successfully recruited a researcher who will be starting probably the 1st of April. And we are in the process of recruiting a project manager because the previous incumbent has since resigned. So we are replacing the project manager to coordinate the project, the backlog project. And we further currently recruiting 4 additional caseworkers, which will be placed in other regions across the country, because the ones we have recruited will only be stationed in the Pretoria region. So we are further also intending on recruiting 5 legal secretaries to support members to speed up the writing decisions. We are doing this because we have also, as we go by, noticed that another hurdle of speedily finalizing these appeals is the typing skills amongst the members. As legal personnel, it is not our expertise, one of our strengths to type. So with that regard, we find that a member takes longer in finalizing an appeal case because of typing constraints. So we have seen that it would assist the project if we can recruit legal secretaries to come and support the members, because with legal secretaries, this is their daily bread. They are experts in the field of typing. You can imagine a legal secretary can produce 20 decisions, type 20 decisions in a day, as opposed to a member sitting somewhere struggling with typing and finalizing a decision, and that will even delay submitting a finalized product as a decision. Next slide. RASA has also received 12 interns from the SACITA in all its 5 regions. These interns assist the project with its day-to-day administrative work. And as stated in the introductory part, the complete project component of members was supposed to be 36, but the UNHCR has approached us to say they are not in a legal, in a financial position to further fund the 10 remaining members that we had to recruit. So as we are now, the project is working on 26 members, and out of these 26 members, 1 member has since deceased, 2 are incapacitated, 1 has resigned, and the other one is on a part-time contract. So as I'm presenting to you now, I'm running with a ship of 18 members out of the envisaged 36. So we are in the process of, as RASA, of recruiting this member, replacing this member who has since deceased, and 1 who has resigned. So this is where we are. So everything that you see now, the progress that you see now is being done by 18 members. Next slide. I will now present to you RASA's adjudication strategy. As more files are being digitalized currently, RASA has adopted the following adjudication strategies, which will assist in decreasing the backlog. RASA is going to prioritize appeals by nationals emanating from the refugee non-producing countries decommissioned by the UNHCR. What we mean here is that there are those countries that we know that they are non-producing refugee countries. And we feel that for us to slash this backlog into half, we need to confront those countries. We have approached the UNHCR in this regard and requested their assistance. And we are agreeing that RASA may proceed and zoom on these nationals which are not from refugee-producing countries. And if we can just start there and plow there, then this will bring a significant decrease in our statistics. RASA has also introduced a performance-based targets to improve performance and accountability. One will ask why RASA did not implement this from the onset. And I'll respond by saying the following. The refugee law and immigration laws of this country are very specialized laws. I'm saying this because as a lawyer myself, I know that this field of law and tax law are categorized elsewhere as special regimes. They are not like your Criminal Procedure Act where you can delve in, sit down, read, and then represent someone in court. We see that by SARS already, they are already having their own tax court. So in short, what I'm saying is members, this legally qualified personnel, when they came and joined RASA, they did not have an idea, or rather, they were not au fait with the immigration regime. We had to train them vigorously in order to put them into speed of this highly specialized part of the law. So mostly, we couldn't implement these targets then when we were still training them. I've reported previously to the committee on the training sessions that we've embarked on with the members, which for us, for me sitting here today here as a chairperson, I believe that was enough to equip the members to at least have an understanding of this animal called the refugee law. So this is why now we're implementing the performance-based targets, because it will be fair now to say this members has been put up to speed with regard to performance. Yes, they are lawyers. One will say they are lawyers. They were supposed to be equipped, but this part of the law is highly specialized, it's technical, and we're dealing with people's livelihoods. So we had to then chip in and then equip them even further with the assistance of the United Nations. And then we are now satisfied that they are well equipped, they now understand fully the crux of the refugee law. Next slide. Our statistical reports include wishlist dashboards to track productivity. The following tables will provide the statistical information in relation to the current backlog cases, the cases streamed, hearing scheduled, and hearing actually conducted by members. Also included is information on cancel and withdrawn appeals. Next slide. This table symbolizes the 133,582 amount, which I said is the ring-fenced amount of our current backlog. So here you can see that throughout our regions, these are the numbers: Cape Town, Durban, Musina, Gqeberha, and Desmond Tutu. You can see there Desmond Tutu is our highest in terms of appeals. We've got the highest backlog of appeals in Pretoria, which is 66,264, which is followed by Cape Town, and then, which is followed by Durban, then Cape Town, Musina, and the lowest being Gqeberha. Next slide. The next slide shows the cases which so far are allocated for review. The cases are reviewed by members before the appeals can proceed. And also hearings scheduled across all the regions, notices for paper determination, as well as notices for no-show. So if I have to explain this, starting with the first line, cases allocated for review. Okay, let me skip this because a review process is just another process to assist into finalizing the appeal. I'll go to the hearing scheduled. The total there of hearing scheduled so far is 4,646. So I want to tap on this. On this 4,646 is the amount of hearings that were scheduled since the inception of this project. And on that note, it does not guarantee that if a hearing is scheduled, we're going to have an appellant in front of RASA, and through that process, we're going to successfully finalize the appeal. Hence, when I started, I embarked on the challenges that we had, because as I said, as at the commencement of the project, we would schedule hearings, but the appellants would not show up. And our RASA's hands became very tight because they would not be in a position to proceed with finalizing the decision, because a member did not came through to be heard. So we did not proceed in line with the legal requirements. Because if we proceed and a member later resurfaces to say, I see there's a decision against me, and I'm reviewing in the High Court because I was not given an opportunity to be heard. So we are avoiding such an issue, because if we keep on doing that, we will go round and round in circles and not be able to finalize the project. So these appeals which are scheduled, they are scheduled now because a member an appellant has confirmed receipt of a notice of hearing. We are no longer scheduling appeals which we know that somebody did not acknowledge. Paper determinations. Paper determinations is when RASA proceed to write a paper determination in the absence of the appellant. This is good news for us. As I said, that we are now seeing the appellants coming in numbers, meaning if an appellant has acknowledged receipt of a notice of hearing, whether or not they come on the date that they're scheduled to be heard, RASA is then inclined to proceed writing the decision, because you have received the notice, you know that you are supposed to come before RASA on a certain date. If you fail to appear, we then now proceed. But before we proceed, this is where we give you a notice of no show, because people might not appear because they were hospitalized. So we give it a period, we notify you that you did not appear, and then of our intention as well to proceed with paper determination. So after that notice, that is when RASA will then proceed to finalize. Previously, we have reported to the committee that we were at 535 finalized decisions when we were given the platform to present. Then when we presented, it was not a good picture. That was before the committee, but things have since improved. Things are turning up, and things will turn up going forward now that we have located our appellants. So the grand total there of 4,741 is where we are today, as at the beginning of March, in terms of the adjudication of the appeals, as well as those appeals which were withdrawn and cancelled. Next slide. On this slide, we see the cancelled, or rather the withdrawn appeals. They are at 3,545. Just to give a short background on this cancelled and withdrawn appeals, this in law is provided for in the Refugees Act, where an appellant is abandoning their claim, or rather they are cancelling or withdrawing their appeals. They come through to RASA. We conduct a brief interview. One of the requirements is that they present a one-way ticket to RASA, and then we cancel the appeal, and then we take their appeals off our backlog. So far it's 3,545, and you can see there on the table the highest being Ethiopians. We are seeing a large number of Ethiopians abandoning or cancelling or withdrawing their appeals, going back to Ethiopia. So these are the issues that we are discussing with the UNHCR to say, if now they are commissioning Ethiopia as a refugee producing country and according to their standards, the UN standards, and now these are the very same Ethiopians now making their way back home. We see also DRC, which we are aware of what is going on at DRC, other parts of DRC. At this point in time, we have 402 cancellations from the DRC. So we continue to engage with the UNHCR. Oh, and Bangladesh there, I see 865. And we are continuing to discuss with the UNHCR to relook at these countries who are commissioned to be refugee producing countries, to say, how do they assist the backlog project? How do we proceed conducting appeals from these countries as we see large numbers of the appellants making their way back home? And further, I must also highlight that it is not only a country that we look at. There are those appellants who are coming to us with what we call, there's a section 3A and 3B. A 3B would be those that are going, that they're here on the basis that something wrong happening in their country, either politically or ethnically, whatsoever. 3A is a claim, a personal claim. It's you as a person being persecuted, like your LGBTQ case-related cases. So there are categories, but mostly of these appellants who are cancelling here are falling under the category of 3B. Next slide. Next slide. Thank you. The additional interventions that RASA wants to employ, or rather we have embarked on to reduce the backlog. The plans include group decisions. The RASA may make a ruling in terms of the practice note that will allow 2 or more appeals to be determined together. This will be the position where a similar question of law or fact arises. Asylum seekers are members of the same family. We look into that. We have already started grouping these nationals. And okay, what I'm trying to say is, apart from this, that similar cases, similar question of law or the same facts arises and family unit, we are also looking at this, what I also said, the low-hanging fruits. The low-hanging fruits are those appellants from non-producing refugee countries, whereby we're going to plow here and then make group decisions from those countries that RASA, together with the UNHCR, will identify. So this is one of the plans that we're going to embark on, and I can promise you, doing that exercise, we will significantly reduce the backlog further. I will not on this platform mention which countries that we're going to look on, but if we were to zoom on those countries and with the help of the UNHCR, we will slash this backlog into half. Next slide. Adjudication of new appeals. As I've indicated that we have ring-fenced this backlog project as until October 2021. So one would ask, what about the new appeals coming through? Are they not forming a backlog? No, not yet. They are not yet forming a backlog, and members will be assigned to start dealing with the new backlog. At least things were a bit slow due to COVID-19, and we don't have large figures in terms of the new appeals that occurred post October 2021. And then when it comes to decision writing, e-files allow for writing efficiently in almost any location as long as a member has a laptop to work from. The e-files are the digitalized files. So what we are doing now, we are working online. A file that is prepared is being allocated to a member each and every day for adjudication. So a member is able to adjudicate on a laptop from beginning until end. So this is one of the mechanisms that we have employed to speedily finalizing the appeals. Further, a live on-stream system is finalized and is still being tested by the DHA's IT Directorate, which will enable us to track productivity of the adjudication process, automatically update statistics, and monitor overall performance across all regions. We also have developed a case management system and it's working very well. Next slide. This will be the final slide, and we do recommend the portfolio committee to note the presentation of RASA. Thank you.
Thank you, Advocate. The next presentation, DDG Sigama.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Deputy Minister, honorable members, DG, and fellow colleagues. Mozi, if you can just load the presentation on the backlogs for civics.
Yeah, you can talk to that while Moses loading it, DDG.
All right, thanks very much, Chair. Yeah, we'll go straight to slide 4, which talks to our problem statement, the background around the backlog that was created within the civics environment, Chairperson. You'll recall that in 1994, South Africa inherited a segregated civil registration system. And since then, we have been trying to de-rationalize the ethnically fragmented apartheid system of the citizenship and build a common national population register. This was based on principles of restorative justice and the one unitary state. So since then, as a result of that, the racial birth registration and the citizenship policies were amongst the first to be dismantled and replaced in order to restore dignity of South African people. So Muzi, if you can just put it on a slideshow. So issues around decolonization were amongst those issues that we had to look at in terms of civil registration. And it had to follow a particular phased approach. One, we had to look into colonialism, which started in 1895 to 1960. We had to look into those records to say how were they registered and where were they kept and how do we then put them together. Then that was followed by the period of apartheid that started in 1961 to 1993. And the last one being the democratic South Africa in 1994 to date. So immediately after 1994, the situation did not change that much because the civil registration process remained to be manual. And we had to make sure that we ferry documents from one office to the other and ultimately be ferried to back office for archiving purposes. So then the problem was exacerbated by the issues around the amalgamation of the TBVC state. And here I'm referring to issues around Transkei, Botswana, Venda, Ciskei, and including states of self-governing as territories, and the former Transvaal that we had in that time, which had major challenges of administration in terms of records, because they were also kept in various territories. So as back office, we had to make sure that we create space for all of them. As DM mentioned this morning, when we started this project, we had about 340 million records that were lying all over the country. As you can see, we've got about 6 repository areas where our records are stored. First one being the Roslyn area, where we've got most of our birth, marriages, and death records. Those date back to 1800 up until 1989. So as you can see, the volumes that are stored at that place is about 136 million. So BVR, which is now called the New Corporation Building, that's where we're sitting at the moment. That's where we stored most of our electronic records, which is within the HANI system, which is the Home Affairs National Identification System. And those ones are images, those and particular systems where we're able to then access images for fingerprints as well as photos. So in those systems, we've got about 48 million. But all in all, as we speak right now, we've got 392 million records that are stored at back office. And the manual records that increase and they change on a daily basis. At back office, we've stored about 32 million at the moment, but those records, they increase on a daily basis. We also tried over the years to store these records electronically through a system called Electronic Document Management System. And we tried to store images from 1989 up until 2002. And in those storage systems, you find that we've got about 59 million images that were stored. That also created a problem, as you can see, because our records are stored at various platforms and it requires really skills as well as manpower to restore them. Then we also, attempts were made over years since 2016 to continue digitizing some of this project. We partnered with Status A, where Status A had to assist us in digitizing some of the amended birth records, and they focused on the records that were registered from 1998 up until 2004. And during those partnerships, we managed to digitize 3.4 million birth records. The CAR file was another medium that was used, wherein records were also stored in various cassettes, depending on the technological involvement. So we had to then move with times and move from CAR file, but at that time, there were about 7,840 cassettes that were used to store certain images. Then we also work closely with the Department of Arts and Culture to also keep some backups for us in case we require some of them. So those entails records for those people who were born from 1990 up until 1999. Then BRADS, it's one of the areas that we also store the so-called fingerprint cards. When a person applies for an ID for the first time, we have to make sure that that first application is stored safely. And in case it is required for any reason, then we are able to go back and restore those images at BRADS. So we had all in all 113 million records that are stored at that site. And in total, back office now is in possession of 392 million records, paper records, including electronic records that are stored. And as and when we are to deal with backlogs identified, we have to go to all those repositories to then retrieve those records. So, but the long-term plan, as Minister has indicated, including DM, was to make sure that we digitalize all our records for ease of reference and also access in our front offices, including back office, for those cases that may be referred to us. As you can see, the benefits are quite clear. It will enable faster access to information. It will also give employees capacity to rapidly discover information, to provide clients with the services they need in a timely manner. It will also increase productivity because you don't have to ferry or go up and down to go and retrieve such records. It will also lower operational costs as printing, preserving, and keeping paper records is expensive. Lastly, it will also improve security of our documents that we have, as well as the issue around automation of our business processes. As at the moment, we have only attempted to automate our birth registration process, though it has got some teething problems here and there, but we could see some value added to this process. Honorable members and chair will be aware that we have already modernized our smart ID cards as well as passports. So going forward, we'll have to make sure that we automate our marriages and death and other processes linked to the National Population Register. Here, we are just trying to show the mandates and how this whole problem is compounded and where do you find some of these aspects. As a branch, we are responsible for the management of National Population Register. We're also responsible for the management of travel documents and citizenship, including document management. And here, in terms of services, it's more about birth, marriages, and death registration, including also making sure that we issue passport and travel documents for those who are due to travel, The same applies to citizenship. We are also responsible for that aspect. Amendments, rectification, and record management is also part of this branch wherein we deal with such service. And last but not least, we are also responsible for the management of South African identity documents as well as harness. As you are aware, we're busy with dealing with ABIS, which will then also deal with some of the aspects that we are dealing with. So for verification, banks and all other institutions that wants to verify information, as back office, we have to make sure that we make precise provision for the records to be verified. So we're still processing green barcoded ID books in some of the areas where we have not yet connected such offices through live capture system, and that also increases the amount of records that we receive on a daily basis. So slide 8, I will try and just summarize it. It's all about the process of our products that we render on a daily basis. Why all we want to indicate here is just all applications are lodged at front offices, including missions, and after that, the paper record sent to back office manually through a courier company to head office. Then we make sure that every application which is lodged through a front office is properly tracked through a system called track and trace, and then we refer it to respective section at the back office for them to then either pre-modify the system, capture them nicely so that you have a record of a person, and the final product will then be viewed by a client at the front office. Then at the end, once that product is ready, in areas where we have automated, we make sure that an SMS goes out or a letter is issued to the client for them to then realize that their products are ready. We are mindful of the fact that from time to time, we do receive a request for us to check for them through our contact center and otherwise, but automatically in terms of our workflow process, once a product is finalized in an automated environment, then it triggered an SMS, for example, for a passport, for an ID, and in some instances, in areas where UBCs are ready or unabridged birth certificates are ready, it also triggered the SMS to the client. That was the rationale for members to understand the process that we take to make sure that at least a product is finalized and the client is notified at the end of the day. So some of them are partially manual, some of them are automated, but the ultimate goal is to make sure that we automate the entire Civic environment to avoid building backlogs in the near future. Then slide 9 really deals with the issue around the backlog that was accumulated over time, and that also leads to high complaints with regard to terminus delivery of products, as well as complaints from front offices and members of the public. So we then decided around June 2022 to then look into all these areas and also to try and analyze the kind of challenges that are experienced by our front office as well as members of the public. Our assessments revealed that we have got plus minus 334,000 backlogs created at various levels. And if you look into that, for birth certificates, we had a backlog of 219,263. In terms of abridged marriage certificate, we had a backlog of 9,392. Unabridged death certificate, we had a backlog of 2,240. Amendment minor, that's where we had a big knock. And this was during that time when we had COVID, wherein some of the parents were not able to register some of the birth, and they later then had to come back and then perform the so-called insertion and so on and so on. Some of them wanted to really amend some of the particulars after COVID. So we had a knock there wherein we had an increase of 90,269 backlog created at that time. So amendment major, it was 11,882. In this area, honorable members, we had a problem in terms of gazetting, because once you have changed the surname, change of the date of birth, and some of the information, we have to make sure that your details are properly published so that whoever would like to challenge those areas will have to go back into the Gazette and look at the dates and everything. And if they are to challenge, whatever we've done, then they'll go back and then look into the Gazette, and then we look into the document that we use to amend or to change such details. And the last one is a duplicate backlog that was created, wherein we had two types of duplicates. Yes, one person with more than one ID. You also have two people sharing an ID. So those are some of the issues that we picked. After realizing that we have got such kind of a backlog, we had to look at the so-called 15 areas that were identified to make sure that we address the backlogs. So after that, we had to develop an implementation plan with clear timelines on how we deal with them. And the next slide does focus on how we manage to work down the backlog over an 8-month period. First thing to do was to make sure that we look at the storage facility where our records are kept here at BVR. We had to make sure that we create space and then ferry some of the records to other areas so that we can be able to access our birth record in those areas. And secondly, we have to look into the workflow process, particularly in the amendment environment, because we realized that the workflow process that we had at that time was too long. So we had to look into that environment to check if ever we can then shorten some of the processes, combine some of them, and also to update our system processes. And in this case, we had to introduce the so-called track and trace to track all applications starting from the front office, the back office, and also to make sure that there's a proper diagnostic analysis within that environment, because at that time there were a lot of noise when clients were complaining on what is happening into that environment. So we have managed to review our workflow process in that environment. And we also had to deal with issues of non-compliance, wherein we also discovered that indeed there were errors performed. We had to write a program which would then make sure that it consolidates all the reports that are sent by various front offices, and where errors were made, then we had to make sure that we send error reports to various office managers, including provincial managers, for them to look into the matter. Wherein there were need for us to train them, we had to arrange such training sessions to make sure that those errors don't occur again. So the fourth point is to deal with non-compliance, but the medium to long-term plan was to make sure that we develop a system that will automate our unabridged death registration certificate system, including a marriage certificate system, so that we then issue such certificates on the spot. So we've already put a program together, but at the back office at the moment, while we're waiting for the automated program, we have also developed a program which will allow us to pre-modify, meaning that once a record is found, we have to go back to the National Population Register and pre-modify the system such that when an applicant lodges an application at the front office, if the record is found, you are able to then receive that unabridged death certificate or marriage certificate on the spot. So those are some of the things, but the medium to long-term plan is to fully automate that environment so that all clients that are to either ceremonize their marriages on the day or when the death is registered, we have to issue an unabridged once and for all. There were also system deficiencies that were identified where we put change requests together, and most of them are now being developed. And I'm happy to indicate that we were able to really deal with issues of duplications that were identified, wherein at times find clients lodging applications using the date of birth, at times using the ID number, which creates multiple searches in our repository units. So then we had to make sure that such applications are linked so that we avoid duplication and repeat trips to our archives. So the issues of batches were also resolved, and including the fixing of the templates that then directs us to where our death registers are archived. So the next slide talks to, which is slide 13, talks to our lack of automation. I think I've spoken to that. The same applies to issues of marriages. Then uncollected smart ID cards, that's where we have also worked on a program which is yet to be communicated on how we deal with those numbers, wherein a person receives an SMS, but later does not come and collect. So we thought we should embark in a huge campaign to address such issues. And there's just a draft that we've put together, and we make sure that we then analyze our data, remove all the deceased people onto our data set so that we can have the proper number of cards that are not collected. I think I've also spoken about the duplicate systems that we've just concluded. And at the moment, indeed, all the duplicate cases that were identified as backlogs were finalized. I would like to move to the next slide, which is slide 14. Indeed, issues of HR capacity is still a challenge. We have to source from within the branch to make sure that we get additional capacity through transfers to go and assist in retrieving records, particularly in the document management unit. We also had to make sure that we quickly advertise our positions that were vacant. And lastly, we had to deal with some of the positions that were critical so that we then improve capacity within the space of document management system. Then the issues around EDMS are issues that were really on the cut, wherein we had to go back to the old technology, look into our old geoboxes, hardware, to make sure that we also retrieve the 59 million images that were included into those geoboxes. So we also had to get a service provider to look into that. But at the moment, I must indicate that we are still working on some of them, since some of the information are not easily retrievable due to old technology and so on. But we also had to work with SSA to look into the 3.4 million images that were also digitized but not being accessed. But we are also happy to indicate that indeed our IT was able to resolve that, when at the moment the 3.4 million images that were digitized by SSA now are easily being accessed. And that's why we were able to conclude some of the backlogs that were identified. And the last one being the issue around challenges experienced when we're trying to automate our birth registration unit. But at the moment, our IT are just busy finalizing that. In terms of progress that has been made against the implementation plan that we've just discussed right now, I'm happy to indicate that we were able to finalize all the 9,392 unabridged marriage certificates. The 2,240 death unabridged death certificates were also concluded. The 90,269 amendments minor were finalized. 11,882 amendment major, we also managed to finalize that, including the duplicates. However, there were 105,480 unabridged birth certificates. We managed to finalize 79,053 UBCs, leaving a balance of 26,427. This is solely because maybe if we can just provide a bit of background on this one. You'll recall that the department took a decision somewhere in March 2013, to say, as from that date, coming this way, we have to issue a birth certificate to every child born in the country, and to avoid accumulating backlogs. So the backlogs that you see here are for those clients who were born prior to March 30, 2013, but had applied for UBCs. Most of them have got the so-called abridged birth certificates in their possession, but most institutions requires that they then bring the so-called unabridged birth certificate. It will include details of the applicant, of the child and the parents in that particular certificate. So what we did to try and look and work down the backlog of the 26,427, we have to source in capacity of about 200 unemployed graduates to assist us in retrieving the manual records from various archives. Then from there, as we are aware, digitization is one area where we thought once all these records are digitized, we will be able to then conclude all the backlog without any challenge. But we'll also have to make sure that we automate the birth registration process, so that at the end, we need to make sure that we issue birth certificate on the spot. So the department also continues to connect health facilities to allow parents to register birth before leaving health facilities. As you are aware, Honorable Chair, the department once presented a plan on how we connect health facilities, wherein health department provided us with a list of 1,445 health facilities. And out of those, we had to draw a plan and categorize health facilities in terms of the delivery points, wherein priority one was for those wherein they give birth of more than 5,000 births in a year. And priority two were for those that delivers 2,000 births but less than 5,000 in a year. And priority three were for those that then delivers 1,000 but less than 2,000 births in a year. And then priority four were for those that delivers 500 but less than 1,000 births in a year, while priority five had to give birth of less than 500. I must say that at the moment, all the 41 health facilities that were identified as priority one have been connected and were able to register such birth, while the 120 were also concluded, which is a combination of priority 2 and 3. So, but plans are underway to make sure that we maximize that process and to avoid our backlogs being recurring. Then in terms of the digitization of records, which is the ultimate plan for us to avoid backlogs from being incurred in the near future, as you have heard, Minister, as well as the Deputy Minister talking about the digitization project, and one could indicate that infrastructure has been secured around SANE to assist us with the digitization of backlogs at the back office. The provinces has also been identified, but they are also going to do the same in an overall digitization project. As one can also indicate that refurbishment of the space to convert same into digitization hubs is underway. So we've been working around the clock to make sure that we then become ready to digitize most of these records. So equipment have been procured, and as one would like to indicate that most of them have been received. We're just waiting for our technicians to really look into the space that has been identified, connect them, test them, so that we can then start with the project. The total number of 1,272 unemployed youth has already been appointed to assist in that. And as you are aware, the ultimate plan is to make sure that we then employ 10,000 graduates to assist in this particular project. In terms of HR, a total number of 652 posts were also funded and advertised to capacitate the front offices as part of the phase one of the business case. So the also filling of those positions is underway, and I must say that they are at advanced stages. So we're aware that in the process of filling these positions, there are those positions that are identified through natural attrition, and we are busy working on those so that we then speed up the process to assist in concluding the project. We also embarked on overtime during this process. Since December, we've been pushing very hard to make sure that we then work down our backlog. So indeed, our colleagues have been working. This backlog is really coming to an end on the 15th of March, and we are sure that whatever we have now as the remainder of our backlog, we should be able to manage it through the normal numbers that we have been assigned through the digitization project. So the last one being for us also to make sure that we work on the phase two of our business case, so that we also capacitate back office, because we have got quite a number of vacancies at the back office. And we hope that if the phase two of our business case is approved, we should be able to manage all the activities at the back office side. Record management, a total of 1.1 million LRBs, which is late registration of birth, including marriage records, have been transferred to our stores so that we then create space and make sure that they are easily accessible. And almost 19,210,000 records has already been rearranged. which also makes life easy for all of us to gain access to the record. The same applies to 100,000 marriage records that were also packed in various stores. We had to make sure that they're centralized in one area. And right now, as we speak, we are able to access all of them. Then the last point here is about our partnership that we had with other government departments, wherein the work that they've done to assist in digitizing such projects is now being easily accessed. And we are able to really work with them so that they also form part of the bigger digitization projects to assist us on how we can conclude some of the issues identified. System issues, which is slide 19. As I've indicated, the plan is to make sure that we fully automate our birth registration process. At the moment, we're piloting with about 28 offices. Already the challenges are identified throughout the pilot program are being resolved through our IT, and we hope to roll out to all our live capture offices so that once a birth occurs in one of the health facilities, including live capture offices where clients will be visiting us, we should be able to issue a birth certificate on the spot without necessarily returning them back to come back and then come to collect the unabridged birth certificate. Issues of our systems, which we had collapsed at that time, has now been fixed in terms of the indexing system for our death records. We managed to resolve that one. System deficiencies around duplicates, as I've indicated before, has been resolved. Gaps identified between legacy system, which is NPR, and live capture. Our interfaces are properly working. We're able to identify duplicates, and we're also able to detect challenges before the clients can even leave. But we said in the new financial year, we would like to make sure that we include issues of automation in the plan for our IT branch, that they then fully automate our birth, marriages, and deaths environment. So lastly, we would like to recommend to the portfolio committee that they note the implementation plan, including the progress made within the Civic branch. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, DTG. And thanks, Advocate and Mr. Simon, for the presentations. We will not allow the DG to comment now. We will comment after we've interacted with the report or respond if the issues that are going to be raised by members. We have afforded yourself to give detailed presentation on the issues related to the subject matter, but also the opportunity to give our people to listen to the issues that we're communicating to the committee, and perhaps some of the issues that are affecting our people, those that are joining us in the proceedings of the portfolio committee. So it was important to not interfere with your presentation, and I hope that members are going to interact with this report. In attendance, we're having Honorable Malekwa, Honorable Khwase, Honorable Hendricks, Honorable Ross, Honorable Tito, Honorable Kanyile, Honorable Pillay, Honorable Bongo. I'm informed that Honorable Van der Merwe and Honorable Modise, they might have difficulties with network. If they have, they will indicate. Honorable Van der Merwe has noted apologies, will be joining another commitment, and Honorable Modise will be transiting to Cape Town to attend session. Honorable Malekwa, in that order.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Let me start by appreciating the presentation. All of them has been presented, and also acknowledge the progress report as presented in all the presentation. We hope that with all the remedial action, together with the plan of action indicated, in the presentation regarding the backlog will be able to be dealt with the hope that the portfolio committee will always continuously be updated regarding any progress or any challenges that may be arising in future. But Chairperson, I just want to check that whether this plan of action that has been presented in all this presentation will be able to assist the department to achieve with regard to the eradication of the backlog. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much for your contributions, Honorable Khwase. Honorable Hendricks.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, thank you for your leadership to bring these very important matters to the Portfolio Committee. My parliamentary constituency offices, we are inundated with issues around this, and I'm very impressed with the passion to reduce the backlog which the officials have indicated. However, Honorable Chair, you will agree with me that in spite of the best endeavors, we need to start thinking out of the box to try and eliminate the backlog. And here I'm specifically referring to temporary and permanent residents. I've listened to the Deputy Minister, and obviously, you know, all of us are guilty of this. We put the economy first, we put jobs first, but it is time that we put women and children first. It is recently we celebrated International Women's Day. We are now going to celebrate Human Rights Day. And it's important that the philosophy and the approach of the department changes. Honorable Chair, it's a pity that you didn't include a report on the hardships that temporary residents and permanent and applicants for permanent residents suffer. And some of the cases that we've had because of the long waiting periods and delays, women had to return to their countries because their passports expired. And there are a whole long list of hardships that they experience. And these couples already have 2 or 3 children born in South Africa. They are South African children. And while we honor all children all over the world, for South African children born in South Africa, you know, to have their mother have to return to their countries to get to renew their passports and then to get visas again, and then their problems will come back. I would like to, I'm going to suggest Al-Jamaa as an opportunity to give a subject for debate in a plenary session, and I'm gonna ask the speaker to approve a debate on the hardships that these people suffer, so that the department's hearts can soften towards women and children. And in conclusion, Honorable Chair, I would like to, if the debate takes place, one of the recommendations I want to make in the debate, and I want to take this committee into confidence, that why don't we issue temporary and permanent residence status to everyone on the backlog who has been on the system, say for a year or more, and the adjudicators they've passed the adjudicators. So when and that gives them instant relief. However, there will be a rider because some of those people may not actually qualify for temporary and permanent residence if they go through the other 6 levels. And I'm glad that the Director General has now been relieved of that responsibility, so there are less levels. So the proposal is that those on the system where the adjudicators have already, they've passed adjudication muster, that they must be given their certificate subject to it being revoked once it eventually reaches level 4 or level 5, seeing that level 6 is no longer present. I think, Honorable Chair, I don't know whether you will have the passion to pursue that, but we are aware of the hardships, and the debate will bring to light the hardships, and it will create a climate where no one will have a quarrel if you take the lead, or the deputy minister take the lead, and say, let us dramatically reduce the backlog by issuing these people with their statuses. They've passed adjudication. Only about 10 or 15% of them may not qualify. Those 10 or 15% can be revoked when the whole process is completed. So that is just my idea. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Hendricks, for your contributions and recommendations. Honorable Roos, you can lower your hand, Honorable Hendricks. Honorable Roos.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the comprehensive presentations, which has been extremely helpful in understanding the situation at Home Affairs. Chair, I'll start with civics. I'll work backwards. And I think, the birth certificates and amendments backlog, it was a huge backlog. And so it's good to see progress in that regard. What I am concerned about is it always seems to be attributed to some external factor. And I think, there was something we spoke about in 2019 where we said that we need to have birth registration at clinics and public hospitals. And the minister committed to this within this term. And we're coming to about a year and a half to go. It doesn't seem like this project is getting there. So I know that I think it was Mr. Sagama that presented where we are with that. But if you can just give us an idea of sort of by the middle of 2024, where are we going to be at with birth registration at all clinics and public hospitals? Then in slide 11, you mentioned the implementation of track and trace. And I know with the Lubisi report, the track and trace was criticized because it was essentially filled in afterwards. It's not filled in as you go along. So if you can just indicate, is this the same track and trace as in permitting? And what kind of reports can you draw from it? Can you, for example, see that an application has sat on an official's desk for 3 months? Can you see that, is it automated in a way where you say, if somebody hasn't dealt with it for 2 weeks, that it's flagged to management? So if you just enlighten us a bit about this, because track and trace is a critical troubleshooting tool that you can use to see where things are getting blocked. Because I'll give you an example of some of the frustrations we face. And there was a query I sent about marriage officers, and I requested the assistance on the 9th of January. And eventually, after many, many emails backwards and forwards, it was now escalated to the minister's office on the 14th of February to say, really now, it's been assigned to 2 officials. And they've just sat on it, and they've decided that they're not going to respond to Lorraine. They're not going to respond to members of parliament. They're just going to ignore it. And I've requested a resolution on this, and I want to understand when I'm going to receive the feedback on this. I specifically asked for an explanation of why those 2 officials did not respond, because I believe it's a challenge that we have in Home Affairs that I've seen, is that we have actually DDGs that work very hard. And there are officials in lower positions that just decide whether they want to work or not. Then we talk about slide 12. We talk about the non-compliant applications at back office. I just want to understand how this is possible, because what this means is that somebody comes to a Home Affairs office, they queue there for the whole day or maybe 2 days, and then they submit documents. And when the back office receives it, the required things are not there. So why is this happening, and what is going to be done to fix it? Because to my understanding, you should receive those documents, scan them in, and there should be a scanned copy of that then gets submitted that can be referred back to. This thing of losing documents is criminal. It's absolutely devastating to people that queue there. They think their application is being assessed, and it isn't, because there's some document missing. Then we go to RASA. I think it started fairly slowly, and we understand that it started later than expected. And we're way behind on this. And it seems like now, though, there's an assurance that we are not going behind, that at least there's not a new backlog forming. But my question in this regard is, out of the 1,000 196 that were finalized, what approximate percentage of the appeals have been successful? In other words, an adverse finding was appealed and then it was overturned. I ask this question because I'm concerned that this number could be higher than expected, which would indicate a problem at the RSDO level or the first instance. And then I'd also like to just understand, it was indicated to us that 146 million was allocated by the UNHCR for this project. How much of this has been spent to date, given that we're at the halfway point? Then moving on to the permitting, Chairperson, we welcome the additional capacity. And I need to reinforce that this is a critic. It's an apex priority of the Department of Home Affairs in the midterm strategic framework from 2019 to 2024. And we're rapidly coming to an end of that. And what it says in the annual report is that the department has a key role to play in supporting economic transformation and job creation through the implementation of a visa regime, or revised visa regime, and the issuance of visas and permits. Okay, and that's also talks about the economic reconstruction and recovery plan. So I'm going to give one example of the kind of revenue that's been thrown away because this is not happening. Now, we talk about the digital nomad visa, which President Ramaphosa mentioned again in his State of the Nation address. And 52 countries, including our neighbors, Namibia, have these digital nomad visas available already. And a survey conducted by MBO partners showed that there's about 4.8 million digital nomads worldwide. And this was in 2021, so this figure's probably grown. And they also found that digital nomads spend on average of 55 to 90,000 Rand a month on expenses such as accommodation, transport, food, and entertainment. So even if you look at the absolute conservative figure and you say that if South Africa had to have it, we were now the 53rd country, and you had to assume that each country got an equal share of this. The revenue that we would stand to get from this, even on the absolute minimum average spend of these persons, is 5 billion Rand per month. So what this means is that within 2 months, you could cover the budget of the Department of Home Affairs just by implementing this visa type. Apart from adding 90,000 skilled workers to our environment here, these persons would live as tourists, and so they would also contribute to tourist jobs. And so I really do hope that these visa promises that were in the State of the Nation address, that were in the Mavuso report, are not being delayed because of backlogs, because the backlogs are self-inflicted. So the Deputy Minister says adjudicators do not have legal training. And my question here is, why were they hired? I mean, if we have a backlog because of the deployment of unqualified cadres, this is a massive problem. But why were they employed in the first place? Because suspensions are one thing, but they turn out to be long-term paid holidays with bonuses and benefits, because it takes 1.5 years to 2 years for the suspension processes and all that goes on there to be adjudicated. And these persons are getting paid their annual bonuses. They continue to get their benefits. And my question in this regard is why is there no succession management? How is it that when a senior adjudicator leaves the department or is suspended, that there's nobody to take over? Then we talk about COVID and COVID being blamed for the backlog. But there are still applications submitted in 2016, 2017, 18, and 19. So my question is, why have these applications not been finalized yet? We see applications from 2022 being finalized. Why are these applications from years ago not being finalized? Chair, I can go on and on, but I think we need to also talk about some proposals that can perhaps help the department to also deal with the cause, because we can keep throwing resources at the backlog, but we need to start finding ways that we can resolve what is causing it so that we can close the tap. Now, if you look at the Lubisi report, permitting report, up to 2019, it shows a rejection rate on the visa adjudication system of 25 to 30%. So if Home Affairs can just indicate what the current rejection rate is on visas, because the complaints from the many complaints that I've received, this figure seems to have certainly more than doubled since 2019. So the same applications are being processed up to 3 times. And we need to ask ourselves whether the following reasons are reasonable. So number one, could not confirm medical aid. So the challenge here is that the POPI Act prevents the medical aid from giving information to third parties. So I'd like to understand how is the reason that the medical aid could not be confirmed, even though proof is provided. How can that be used as a reason to reject a claim, an application? Another reason is no SACWA certificate submitted. So a critical skills visa can't be submitted without that SACWA certificate. But again, these sometimes get rejected on photo quality, and then the person needs to completely reapply and pay 3,000 Rand. Instead of a situation where if the copy is not good, then just submit another one, request the client to submit another one. Lecturers, overseas lecturers are being rejected due to no registration with a statutory body. But there isn't a statutory body for lecturers. So why are these persons being rejected on the basis of a statutory body, which is impossible to fulfill? It's a requirement that's impossible to fulfill. Then we have employment could not be confirmed, where the employer is called once, and if HR is not available, then the application is rejected. Then we have the applications rejected for police clearance. So by the time the application is adjudicated, that's expired. So it's very good to see that this is being addressed. Then we have rejections based on no change of conditions allowed. Now, there was a constitutional court order that said that spouses can change their status within the country. And the Department of Home Affairs was given 2 years to make the changes. And yet, despite Directive 7 of 2019 being enforced, there are many adjudicators that don't seem to know about it. And so I want to understand what is going to be done to resolve that, because it's just crazy that it's rejected for that reason. And then obviously the persons will reapply. Then spousal visas being rejected for no marriage certificates attached. Again, how can this be possible? So VFS takes the application, there should be a checklist, and then that gets scanned in and sent off. So why are these marriage certificates disappearing? And why does the department, if it doesn't find it for whatever reason in the physical document, go and refer back and get the electronic copy? Then in September 22, the Minister Gondongwana, in the Vulindlela report, he spoke about a visa recognition program that was going to be implemented in the next quarter, which is now, that will allow the holders of certain visas of recognized countries to enter South Africa without a new application process. So where are we at with that? Because that will surely also take a load off the new applications. Because the only beneficiary in this case, even when applications are rejected from no fault of the applicant, but a fault of VFS or the front office, the applicant still has to reapply and pay 1,550 Rand, which is absolutely ridiculous. Then we also receive complaints that tourists apply for renewal of the, within the first 30 days of their tourist visa, and that it takes so long for that to be adjudicated that the 90 days has expired and they go home. So they stop spending money in South Africa and our tourist economy suffers. So my question in this regard is, why is it not possible to amend this? Is there any indications that the department is looking at how you can renew these tourist visas if there's nothing that comes up on a criminal record system, if they've been in the country and there's been no problems, that can be sped up? Because this must be the cause of a lot of delays on the department side as well. And coming towards the end, another concern raised in the Levisi report was the manual processes. So even the track and trace was only filled in after the fact, as I said. And if we look at the missions abroad, the report also says that they cannot network. So visas and permits are done manually, which is a cause for serious concerns. Then the minister, another suggestion on the PR applications is to grant a minimum requirement exemption especially to spouses who have been married for longer than 5 years and have children together. This is clearly not a sham marriage. They've been together for a considerable amount of time and they have children together. Now, this was done in 2000 after the Dawood court case. Could the department not consider handling these kind of applications in a similar way to deal with that spousal visa backlog? Then just a question on I think I must have misheard it, but I think Mr. Simon spoke about 81 officials working overtime. But I understood there were 39 officials and now you're adding 18. So if I could just get clarification on that. as well as the turnaround time on the e-visa. What is the turnaround time currently on the e-visa? Then finally, a question on the blanket waiver, which is expiring at the end of this month. Will this be extended, and is there any indication of when this will be extended to? And then finally, Chairperson, there was mention made of the Mavuso Msimang report on the review of the work visa regime. I'd just like to request again that we receive this report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Rose, for your contributions. Honorable Tito.
Thanks, Chairperson. Thanks to everyone. And I will also like to acknowledge the presentations that was done, Chair. Chair, I'm going to ask a question on the civic services. As the department, I didn't see any presentation on the backlog of the late registrations of birth applications. So how many applications for late registration of births they have received, and how many have been finalized dating back to 2018? And also, Chair, still on the civic services, why are births still being recorded manually? Doesn't this defeat the purpose of the digitization project? And what will happen with the old physical records once the digitization project is being completed? And then, Chair, I'll go straight to the refugee appeals. On the asylum seekers, Chair, we are seeing that the management, including RASA and the Standing Committee on Refugee Affairs, used to make available performances annually, and statistics and the statistics reports. Is this still done, and can it be forwarded to the committee as soon as they are done on a yearly, like giving us a report every yearly on the statistics and also on the annual performances? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Tito, for your contributions. Honorable Kanyile.
Thank you, Chairperson, and questions to everyone in the meeting. Chairperson, I am going to start with the immigration. Before I do that, I would like to acknowledge all the presentations that are before us. Chairperson, I think if you will remember very well, before I go into the issue of the backlog as well, there's something that I want to raise. The Minister and the Deputy Minister have always promised us that all the queries that we receive from members of the public, our queries are going to be prioritized. I am having a huge concern. We have raised this before, and it was addressed immediately after the last portfolio committee where we raised this issue, that we're not getting feedback from immigration. But after that, the officials are ignoring our emails. And that is not Mr. Simons. I normally see Mr. Simons acknowledging receipts of the emails. I think it is something that Honorable Rose have spoken to, but I feel that it is very important that I reiterate on that. He will then cascade the queries to other officials. I remember, I think I'm sitting with about 4 queries that he sent to Nishal. Nishal acknowledged receipt. He even contacted me. I think that was in January. Up until this day, I haven't heard from him. I think I have sent him about 7 emails already. He's not responding. And Chairperson, this is very frustrating because at the same time, it leaves us with a huge amount of administration. Over and above that, when the members of the community keep following up with us, we must always apologize to them for how they have been treated by the department. But at the same time, the department is giving us the same treatment. I would like this issue to be addressed, Chairperson. We still want our issues to be addressed because at some point we do get a huge amount of queries, but over time they do lessen. So I do believe that those issues they can be attended to. Coming into the presentation, I have noted that the department has indicated that most of the backlog was caused by the COVID because some of the applications were stopped. But looking at the presentation, the department had backlog from 2016 up until 2020, and their biggest amount of the backlogs is in 2019. And I know, I just double checked that we had our first case here in South Africa of COVID in 2020. That was in March, and only went on hard lockdown on the 21st of September to the 28th of December. So surely COVID cannot be blamed for the backlog for 2019 up until 2016. We would like the department to tell us what caused these backlogs. And over and above that, one would have thought that when the department comes to give us the presentation, they would have indicated that of the 3,524 backlog of 2016, how much have been addressed and at what stage are they in. I have also noted that the department or the acting DDG also indicated that I think one person that processes this application need about, I think he mentioned 5 hours, 7 applications per day, which makes about 7 applications per day. What normally happens when you send a follow-up to immigration on these queries, if you send a follow-up in Jan, you will be told that the matter is sitting at the 3rd quality assurance. And if you send another follow-up at 8 months later, you are still giving the same feedback. So if one official only need 1 day to do 7 applications, what then causes us to get a feedback that one matter 8 months later is still sitting on the same status? Chairperson, I would also like to go to the RASA. RASA have also indicated that one of the reasons why they are actually unable to finalize some of their appeals at their hand, it is the fact that they are unable to trace the appellants. I would like to know that what measures are in place by RASA to ensure that these appellants, they are actually traceable. Do they give maybe their current address? Are they made to go in the country, find a place to stay, maybe report as and when required, maybe monthly, to confirm their residential address? Because we are sitting with a big problem if we are sitting with people that are untraceable in a country where we are always complaining about the high rates of people that are not documented. So I would like to know what measures are in place to ensure that going forward, these applicants are going to be traceable. Chairperson, on the civic services, we also note the inputs, and we also acknowledge the work that is and the service that we normally get from them. However, I just have 1 or 2 questions in this regard. We were not finished with the details on, I don't know if this will be a backlog or if will be an application that was received on people that have been erroneously declared dead by the department. On how many applications do they have, when were they received, and what is the turnaround time, and where are they? I am asking this question because I have worked with about 2 or 3 cases at the moment where it took these people that were trying to get this document corrected because they were still alive. It took the department about 12 years, and it was only resolved through our intervention. I will appreciate if the department can be able to finish us with those details. Another one will be the one for the transgender communities. We're getting a huge amount of queries from people who have done this procedure. They are indicating that after they have done this procedure with the doctor's reports and all the reports that are required, they submit to the Department of Home Affairs and they are being ignored. We would like to know what is the current status on these issues that they have been submitted. In closing, Chairperson, I just quickly want to go back to the issue of immigration. I think you are well aware that previously we have worked with Mr. Matthews and we have worked with Mr. McKay. And I want to reiterate that I am not blaming Mr. Simons. But when they were still in this position, we were getting responses quicker than what is happening now. What I would like to know is that from that period until where we are today, what has changed? Maybe if we can be finished with it, it will be easier for us to also be able to explain to members of the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your contributions. Honorable Pile.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Let me first note all of the reports and made. However, Chair, I have to backlogs is a serious problem. It's a challenge, and not just for us as members of this committee, but for all applicants. I think the biggest frustration is having to have these backlogs. Now, I'm going to join my colleagues, Chair, in raising this concern about backlogs prior to COVID. And I'm going to ask that there be a specific number indicated to us in terms of what was the backlogs prior to COVID. And then an explanation as to why. Because my understanding is that during COVID, a lot of the work that was being done was office-based, was done virtually, etc. And I'm saying that there could have been a substantial number of those backlogs undertaken during that period when there was not heavy traffic. And it concerns me that has not happened. Chairperson, I want to propose that in light of receiving all of these presentations, and they all are quite clear and concise, that the only way in which we can be able to track progress and evaluate and monitor what is going on is if we get a report, whether it's every second month or quarterly, in terms of the progress made in respect of all the backlogs. And I think it's important for this committee to be appraised in terms of what is happening. And if we see that there's no significant progress, then we are then able to step in and say, we need to change certain things. Because all the time, you would receive a presentation that is good on paper. But the implementation, we want to see proper implementation. Chairperson, in respect of vacancies, because I think that one of the biggest challenges that we see in all of the presentations is where to undertake for certain things to be more timeously executed. What are the funded vacancies and unfunded vacancies? And in terms of filling the vacancies, I think I heard DDG Mavuso say that it's at a advanced stage. My question is, what is the advanced stage? Has it been advertised? Has it been shortlisted? Are they going to be finalizing this? And if not, give us a timeline. Give us the time frame of when and how this is going to be undertaken, because we're able to bring in more resources in terms of assisting the process. Then, Chair, I want to suggest, if it's not already there, how we are able to link the Department of Home Affairs to SACWA, so that it reduces the delays that you have in terms of projection. Do we have that in place so that we're able to fast track that? I think that it's important for us. Yes, Chair. Can you hear me?
Can you just recap the last point you're making, because you got lost. You were recommending something, but you got lost because the network tampered with your contributions.
Was it the SACWA? Did you hear the part about SACWA?
No, I think it's that point. Yes. You can proceed.
Okay. Chair, the question is whether we have a link with SACWA. If not, how can we ensure that we have that link with SACWA so that it reduces that delay that we have in terms of SACWA qualifications and accreditations being confirmed? Does the department have a means of linking to SACWA, or can we not engage with the department or relevant department to be able to get that kind of link of SACWA? And the last one, Chair, is in respect of late registration of births. I think that we have to do something urgently about increasing the backlog in terms of late registration of birth. I think we can't have that outstanding for so long, and how we can be able to speed up that process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can I check if Honorable Van der Merwe is in the meeting? Honorable Mudise. Okay. Thank you, Honorable Play, for your contributions. Honorable Bongo.
No, thank you, Chairperson, and greetings to everyone. We would like to acknowledge the reports. The reports do show that there is some progress, and there's some work that is being done in terms of the issues of backlog in the department. Then maybe to start with the RASA report, I think what we may have to recommend is that we need to deal with these issues at the speed at which they really deserve, because in our desk, there are a lot of complaints that are sitting with us in terms of the appeals and everything. So the report must correspond with the complaints that we have as members. And that will be very important, but the report is good, but we need to accelerate in terms of what we need to do going forward. In terms of Civic, I think I must start by saying and acknowledging the work that is put by Mr. Sikama. Well, every time we call is handy in dealing with the problems that we raise, and we acknowledge the report. I think it's quite a good report. All we need to do is just to do that as members of parliament, to encourage the work that is being done by that portion, that's Civic. I think there's a lot of work, good work that is being done. We need to acknowledge that, and we need to, so that these officials must get vigor and power to do more. I do accept what Honorable Ross has said in terms of some things, but the overall work, I think it's very impressive. I do take on my own oversight. Like I went to Centurion and I went to Siabuso. You can see that there are a lot of officials who are prepared to do the work and who are highly encouraged. And the other presentation on the backlog, on the report by the first report, or the first report by Mr. Simons. I think there are a lot of challenges there, and we need to acknowledge the backlog is too much. It's too much, and not only too much, but unacceptable. And to say that we're going to blame a period of COVID and so on, it is not going to assist us going forward. We need a force multiplier to deal with this backlog in the permit sites, in the visa sites, and everywhere in that space. The issue of vacancies that are there must be attended to with the speed of a mirage. The turnaround that they are saying other officials will come from abroad and augment and so on. Those officials, when they come from abroad, they are completely disorientated in terms of what is happening. We've got to train them a bit for 2 weeks or so that they can know what we're crying about. So it's a problem, and we need a force multiplier to deal with that backlog in that space. And the Honorable Kanyere is correct. We're not getting joy from the complaints that we get from the public and we send to that section. We and the public are the same in terms of getting joy in that space. So we've got to Deputy Minister to put some measures. And I like what Honorable Hendricks has raised as suggestions. I think we need to go back and look at those suggestions. Not as one size fits all, but let's look, what can we do? Because in my desk, I'm sitting with people who are saying, for 5 years, nothing, I don't have any response. Others for 2 years and so on. So how do we categorize all these segments and say, for this one, maybe let us grant them, or this one, let us do this, because it is a big backlog and we can't do it such a backlog. It will impact on two things. One, on the work that must be done on the current applications. Two, it will impact on the number of people who are in the country illegally. I made an example some other day that if you look at the situation in Rwanda, you know, in Rwanda it's very simple to get in. That is why it is simple to get out. People who get to Rwanda, they get very simple, they get out. But in South Africa, it's very difficult to get in. And when people are in, they're hesitant to leave because they know that coming back will be difficult. So we've got to have some turnaround strategy in terms of ensuring that it is getting very simple for people to get in so that they can get out. If they get in, they see it as something very big. They just stay in, they don't renew. Then your problem in terms of people who are inside illegally gets to be bigger and bigger. So this backlog is contributing towards that, Chairperson. So we've got to have and support Pillay when he says, maybe on a quarterly basis or on a monthly basis, we must be briefed about the backlog. Because the backlog affects what we must do currently. It's affected by the backlog. So we've got to deal with these issues. And where we note what was said previously in the medium-term strategic framework by the department and so on, whilst there is some stable work that is happening, but the backlog is going to cause problems for the oversight, it's going to cause problems for the department itself in terms of what it must do, because from time to time when you must deal with current issues, the backlog is following you. So we've got to do an extraordinary thing about this backlog. If it means we must improve on overtime, like they've said in the presentation, we've got to concentrate on that. If we need to improve on getting people specifically dealing with this matter for a specified period of time, just to deal with the backlog, we've got to do that. So we want the department to improve and come up with extraordinary measures to deal with backlogs. Because if we don't deal with backlogs, we're going to have this problem that we have. I have 19 complaints on my table about permit visas and what, and they're sent by members of the public. And we've got to respond. When I send these things to the department, no one says anything. It's like I'm multiplying my own efforts by 0 as a member of parliament. And we, as members, were expected to assist the public. But at the same time, we're not working for the department. So the department must assist us in ensuring that systems are properly put in place in dealing with all these backlogs that are there. But we do acknowledge, Chair, that there is some work that is being done. But given the backlog, we need extraordinary measures that will be seen to be assisting members of the public and the members of parliament, because I've listened, Ross has a number of complaints. You, Chairperson, have a number of complaints. Honorable Kanyile, Honorable Tito, Honorable Pillay, Lehwasa, and everyone has these things. And they get to frustrate members of the committee in terms of how to move forward. So we'll need a proper cooperation, particularly from this section of Mr. Simons, where he is. I know he's acting, but we need to either fill in the vacancies or put in some measures to deal with the backlog specifically, so that we don't interrupt the system that is running on the new application and so on. I think that will be my contribution, but I appreciate what is happening in Civic, Chairperson. The work is commendable, and I think Mrs. Gama must talk to the officials and say that we don't take very light as the committee, the work that the officials in that space are putting in ensuring that our people are assisted. I have also seen the two oversight I've made. I have visited. The queues are also improving in terms of how things, not that there are no challenges. I think I'll stop there, Chair, for now. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Honorable Bongo, for your contributions. We're going to request that the team comment or respond on the issues raised. I think in the main, there were recommendations that you must work on. We are also working towards the strategic plan with the department, and some of the issues that members are raising, we may need to ground them and package so that department, when they come back, we then able to allow the strategic plan to input so that we assist where weaknesses have been identified and where there's progress on the issues, we're able to maintain that, and sufficient support is available. I'm going to request that we get Mr. Simon few minutes comments, to get Mr. Advocate Rapesu, we get Mr. Sigama, we get the DG, and then we get summary comment on behalf of the department, the Deputy Minister. Then we'll deal with the issues that are coming out of the response, so that we formulate how we must appreciate the three presentations. Mr. Simons.
Chairperson, it seems Mr. Simons has lost the network and is no longer with us right now. But I think we can defer some of the issues to the DG and myself if he doesn't come in before time. Thank you.
No, it's fine. Thank you, DG. Deputy Minister. Advocate Rapesu. Okay. Mr. Sigama. Then the other issues will be dealt with by the DG and the Deputy Minister. Mr. Sigama.
Thanks very much, Chair, and the DM and honorable members. I'll start with the questions that were raised by Honorable Ruas in terms of the plan to connect health facilities and what is that we're doing. Quickly on that one, yes, indeed, the plan is still in place. We have now reviewed it, wherein we have realized that we rather focus on high volume health facilities, which will then allow us to really capture more birth in the next few years. So we have now condensed our plans to deal with priority 1, 2, and 3. And as for priority 4 and 5, we've decided to condense it so that we may either use a round-robin exercise where people will then move from one health facility to the other, due to the fact that those are low volume health facilities, which then either register less than 1,000 births in a year. So we thought we indeed would be wasting resources rather than to then either get mobiles or have people that then move around those health facilities to register. So the plan, Honorable Rose, is still on the card. We'll make sure that we fast track it. And now that it is condensed, we are likely to finalize it earlier than planned. Honorable Rose will also recall that our plan was for 5 years. So if we are to condense it, obviously it means that we'll have to finalize it earlier than the 5 years as per the plan that we had before. But we'll continue to update the committee on what is happening in that environment. There was a question, Chair, around track and trace, whether the track and trace used in permit is the same as the track and trace used at the back office. The answer is no. Our track and trace deals with the actual a movement of an application form, which then tracks from the office of source, when the courier receives the application, back office, and then back at the office until the client has received the product. So we are able to track each and every step, particularly on the automated areas. Where we're still lacking and we're in a process of finalizing is in areas where we have not yet automated. Track and trace is in place, but the most of the stages or processes are manual, which requires automation for us to fast track that area. Non-compliant applications, why do we still have that? Yes, this was some of the issues that were identified during the assessment stage when we picked up the level of backlog, particularly the amendment environment. And we had now decided to draw up a program that will pick all the errors as per the SOP or standard operating procedures, because we had to map it out into the system to track each and every flow of information. And right at the end, we were able to then pick up the non-compliance on some of the applications. So the decision was, say, once you pick it, you then, through your error report, you then flag it to the office for the office to rectify and bring it back. So that was the mechanism that was employed. But going forward, we're saying once it's automated, the system won't allow incomplete applications to go through if the requirements are not met. There was a question, Chair, around LRBs. I'll be quick on that one. You recall that early registration is within 30 days, and we've got no serious measures with that. Our biggest challenge is for those that are above 30 days, but less than 14 years. And that's where now those are adjudicated at a local office, and we don't have statistics at the moment to indicate the volumes in which such LRBs are being experienced. So in terms of those that are 15 years and above, remember they have to set up appointment, and those people have to make sure that they come to us. Those are those are areas where we're still trying to gather statistics, but we are then saying that the ultimate goal is to engage on public awareness so that our members of the public should know that they should avoid LRBs at all costs. Make sure that you register birth within 30 days to avoid LRB in the near future, because that will require us to go deeper and request additional information up until we're satisfied before we can conclude the processing of such applications. But we will then make sure that we submit the statistics if it's required, because it's still manual at the moment. We need to then collate it with provinces in order to get an accurate figure. Chair, there was a question raised by Honorable Kanyile on statistics on transgender. Yes, ever since we started with the numbers recording, we had about 476, and of which most of them are finalized. At the moment, we have got work in hand, about 27 of them. We still have to contact clients. We have to make sure that all the requirements are met, because at the moment, the documents received really it does not leave us to then process those applications. Most of the letters were sent. We're just waiting for clients to give us feedback with additional information required. The last one is around declared people that are declared dead, but they're still alive. What are the numbers? Chair, I must indicate that we do have a minimal number, due to the fact that all offices now have introduced the so-called online verification. As and when we register death, we have to make sure that we capture fingerprints, verify them, and only when we get results from HANIS, then we continue with the process. The same applies to the fingerprints that are being taken on 1663, which is the death registration form. Those things now are being, we're in a process of trying to automate them so that we verify information before we can even issue a death certificate. So, but at the moment, the numbers are quite minimal, but we hope that with the implementation of certain modules within HANIS and ABIS, that will help us, because most of the process will be automated, and that will give us better results. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, DDG Sigama. Can I invite the Director General?
Thank you, Chair. I suppose Mr. Simons is back. I'm not sure if you want to take him now or he can come back afterwards. Similarly, I think the chairperson of RASA, we lost her, but I can deal with some of the issues. Thank you, Chairperson, Deputy Minister, and all the honorable members for the questions that have been raised. So let me then start with the question that was raised by Honorable Mulikwa on whether these plans will address the backlogs. In our own view and in the plans that we've shared both with the Minister and the Deputy Minister, we believe that we will address the backlogs. If I were to start, for example, with civics, we were sitting at around 400,000 when we started with the backlog project on amendments. And I can assure you that through that plan, we now are sitting at probably less than 60,000, because both these plans for civics and the plan for immigration services are monitored by the Minister and the Deputy Minister at every M. These are standing items where we're able to indicate the progress that we're making, or where there are constraints, we're able to raise some of those issues. So yes, we will be able to address the bulk of the backlogs. We've started on the civic side, and we're of the view that it should be the same for the permitting area. And on the question by Honorable Hendricks from Al Jama, I suppose the answer also lies in the members of parliament. If there's a view that legislative requirements should be amended, I suppose that's in the hands of the members of parliament. The challenge that we have is that currently as is, we can't deviate from the legislative prescripts on those permanent residence permit that you were referring to. However, I think as part of the backlogs, those are things that we have prioritized, and we are really working quite hard to make sure that we address all those issues. And I suppose, as Honorable Bongo indicated, that there's a need to accelerate, and we have taken note of that. We are accelerating, including the overtime that Mr. Simons spoke about. And the CFO has agreed in most instances to add additional hours to the teams that are working on these permits, including us bringing additional capacity from the provinces. We've done that. But one of the issues that I wanted to say, Chairperson, the reason why, if you look at civics, why we've moved in this manner, it's also because we've capacitated civics. If you recall, when we presented the business case, out of the 754 positions that we have received from Treasury, the majority of those went to civics. 639 of those went to around 642 or so went to civics, and the majority have been filled, including the additional capacity that DG Mavuso has added in terms of the digitization initiative in the civic space, which is why you're starting to see numbers around amendments reducing. So we'll continue to have a focus on IMS, in particular permitting, and we're of the view that the additional 18 adjudicators should be able to assist us with regards to the backlogs. Honorable Ross, you asked a question whether we're able to monitor in terms of the age analysis. Yes, on the VAS system, we are able to monitor who's been sitting with applications. And the beauty about the system is that currently, Mr. Simons in his presentation indicated that we have appointed someone who's a data analyst, who's able to give us statistics at the end of the day and at the beginning of the day. So on a daily basis, everyone gets their share in terms of how many from the backlog projects, which will be applications before the ones that we're referring to from around 2016-17, and the ones that are new. So there's a separation that the data analyst does and monitors us in terms of our performance with regards to that. So yes, we're able to look at that in terms of the data analysis. I think we agree with you, Honorable Ross, the permitting area, in particular, the activities around there are apex priority, to the extent that if you were to look at some of the recommendations that you are making around some of the visas, whether it's the nomad visas or digital nomad visas, we are working on an implementation plan with a team from the presidency in terms of ensuring that we speedily implement the changes that are being recommended in the report that they've given to the president. And if you recall, there are 8 recommendations broadly classified into 2, whether they speak to legislative and policy, and then of course the other one is systems. And there are a number of things that in terms of the SOPs and the regulations, we will start eliminating, such as your requirement for your radiology report. And I suppose you do know, Honorable Boss, that we are amongst one of the highest, amongst the countries with the highest prevalence in terms of TB, which was one of the issues that the radiology report was trying to look at. And then, of course, we are continuing to implement that. There was also a question as to whether, by Honorable Pillay, whether we do have a relationship with SAQA. Yes, we do have a relationship. The fact that we were able to fill so many vacancies within a short period of time is as a result of the weekly meetings that DDG, acting DDG, HR, has been having with SAQA through a formal request that we've made to them. And we hope it will be able to assist us, including other stakeholders, with regards to the finalization of some of the visas and permits. I suppose the issue around capacity at permitting, it's something that we are conducting or continuing to work on, in particular in terms of the second business case that we are working on, because it's an area, if you were to look at both civics and permitting, these are areas that were not capacitated optimally. And you'll recall that when we presented to the portfolio committee, we're sitting at around 39%. And the capacitation program has enabled us to just move towards 42%. So there's still a lot that we need to do in that space. But also, Honorable Ross, we do have a relationship with Universities South Africa to look at those applications that you are referring to. For lecturers, we just had one meeting sometimes last week that was looking at outstanding student visas. And now I think the focus this week from both Mr. Simons and Michelle is to look at the ones for the lecturers. And we do provide regular reports to Universities South Africa. This is a structure that's made up of all the universities in South Africa. And one of the reasons why we thought we needed to have this formal relationship is that instead of us attending to individual queries and applications from a number of universities, it's better if it comes from one entity. And in this case, it's a University of South Africa. And the fact that we've introduced operations management has really assisted us on a daily basis to track and make sure that the performance around permitting is addressed. And of course, Honorable Bongo, we do take your comment around vacancies, which we are attending to, including the shortlisting process for both the DDG and the Chief Director that's currently underway. So let me then pause the Deputy Minister. I'm not sure if Mr. Simons is back online. I don't see him yet, but Advocate Rapesu is back online, Chairperson, if you wanted to respond to some of the issues.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, DJ.
Can I check if Mr. Simons is back?
Yes, Chair, I'm back. Apologies, Chair and members. I don't know what happened to my connectivity on my laptop. I'm sitting in the office. I'm now connecting on my cell phone, Chair. So I am back, Chair. With your permission, if I can then respond, Chair.
Yeah, if you can comment on the issues raised. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. And same like DG, thank you very much, honorable members, for your comments and questions. And it assists us also to improve further, particularly the issues about thinking outside the box that all the members have raised. We have, that's why we brought in staff from provincial offices to deal with the backlog and the bottleneck that's created at Quality Assurance 3 for to assist us, because we do not have those positions in head office. The delegations is a key part of what we had to change to just simplify and reduce the different levels and speed up the processing of applications. One of the areas that we have needed, and this is also a question raised by Honorable Pillay, is that the VAS system adjudication can only be done inside the office on the data line of Home Affairs, so it cannot be done remotely. So you need to come into an office to complete an application or attend to applications. This is one key development that we require, that we're busy with our IT unit. We are trying it out. They're piloting it now at 3 laptops that they've provided to us. But Honorable Pillay, if I can jump to that question, for example, during COVID-19, how it affected us is that the staff were working from home because of social distancing and the setup within the Hallmark building. We were on the 21st floor in smaller offices, the whole adjudication unit, and there was no social distancing. So at one stage, we had to work with 50% staff, 30% staff. And when COVID started in March 2020, the first month, we had nobody working in our offices. So the applications, and Honorable Kanile also raised this, applications from mid-2019 were not during the COVID period when we had so few staff, couldn't be attended to because of social distancing, the staff not being available for that. And also what exacerbated the COVID-19, what it exacerbated, particularly the backlog in temporary residence, because from 22 September 2020, in the midst of COVID, we opened up for applications on temporary residence. That started to come in, but yet we are still operating with social distancing, etc. So we couldn't finalize those applications, and that was a direct impact from COVID. But I take the point raised by all the members of 2016 applications and why the backlog occurred, chairperson and members that raised that particular question. I think that to align with what Honorable Roos indicated, the apex priority of Home Affairs had always been to look at applications for economic transformation and job creation. So our capacities were always focused on the APP targets, which is critical skills, business visas,